Elon Musk had always been known for his visionary ideas and groundbreaking inventions. From Tesla's electric cars to SpaceX's ambitions of colonizing Mars, his mind was always working on the next big thing. But tonight, in the comfort of his home, something unexpected was about to happen. It was a quiet evening, and Elon had invited some close friends and family over for a small gathering. The sun had just set, and the warm glow of the living room lights filled the space. Music played softly in the background, and the laughter of children echoed through the house. But amidst all the chatter, one voice stood out, high-pitched, innocent, yet surprisingly insightful. Why can't the car drive without a person? Why does it need a person to tell it where to go? It was A-Xii, 12, his 4-year-old son, casually sitting on the floor with a toy car in his hand. Elon paused mid-conversation with his friend, the CEO of a tech startup, and glanced down at his son. X, with his wide eyes and tousled hair, seemed to be lost in thought, turning the toy car over in his hands. "Well, buddy," Elon began, smiling at the innocent curiosity in his son's question, "the car needs sensors and computers to make sure it doesn't crash. But we're working on making it smarter, so one day, it won't need anyone behind the wheel." X didn't seem entirely convinced. "Why not just use the stars? You know, like how people used to navigate before all the machines. Wouldn't that work better?" Elon chuckled, half amused by the thought. It was a playful suggestion, nothing more. After all, a 4-year-old wasn't supposed to understand the complexities of autonomous vehicles, right? Still, there was something in the way X said it that made him pause. The thought of using the stars as a form of navigation was absurd, but also oddly brilliant in its simplicity. Could there be something to that idea? His friend, who had been watching the exchange, spoke up. "I gotta admit, that's an interesting question. Stars, huh? Who knows, maybe he's onto something." Elon wasn't sure if his friend was joking or genuinely curious. Either way, he found himself intrigued. He hadn't given much thought to the idea of using natural navigation systems in modern technology. And yet, here was his 4-year-old son suggesting it in the most casual way, as if he was unlocking the potential to something world-changing. The conversation moved on as the night went by, but Elon couldn't shake the thought of X's question. What if there was more to it than just kids' imagination? His mind started to wander, thinking of ways to incorporate unconventional navigation systems into Tesla's self-driving technology. Could there be a way to connect the dots between ancient methods of navigation and cutting-edge modern tech? But Elon didn't bring it up again that night. After all, he had 1,000 things to think about, from SpaceX's Mars mission to the next Tesla model. X's idea seemed like just a passing comment, a random thought from a child who didn't know better. Still, as the evening wore on and he watched X run around with the other kids, there was a tiny flicker of curiosity that refused to go out. It wasn't just a random comment. There was something about it, something that felt different. Later that night, as the house settled into silence and everyone went to bed, Elon found himself in his study. He couldn't help himself. He opened up his laptop and began to search for ideas that combined space-age technology with ancient methods of navigation. As he scrolled through articles about star maps, celestial navigation, and advanced sensor systems, a small voice in his head kept telling him to dig deeper. Maybe, just maybe, there was something revolutionary here. He leaned back in his chair, lost in thought. What if X was onto something? What if this small, seemingly insignificant comment about stars could be the key to a new era in autonomous driving? It was a stretch, sure, but Elon had always been one to take risks on unorthodox ideas. After all, who would have thought that electric cars would ever rival gas-powered vehicles? Who would have thought SpaceX could land a rocket on a floating platform? And yet, here he was, leading both of those industries into the future. Maybe it's worth exploring, he muttered to himself. The following days were a blur. Elon kept pushing forward with his usual projects, meeting with engineers, attending board meetings, and juggling a million tasks at once. But in the back of his mind, X's question lingered. He didn't tell anyone about it yet, not even Grimes, his partner, because it was still just a passing thought. But every now and then, in the quiet moments, he found himself thinking about it more seriously. What if the stars could be the missing piece in the puzzle of self-driving cars? What if there was a way to integrate the guidance of celestial bodies into the systems that powered Tesla's autonomous vehicles? The idea was bold, maybe even insane, but it felt right. Elon's entire career had been built on the impossible. The idea of using stars as a navigational tool felt just like that, impossible, yet tantalizing. A few weeks later, as he sat in a Tesla team meeting, Elon found himself mulling over the concept once again. He opened the floor to his engineers. "All right, I've been thinking about something recently, something a little unconventional," Elon began, his voice calm but filled with the underlying intensity that usually signaled the start of something groundbreaking. What if we could combine the precision of our current sensors with something more natural? Like the stars. Or something else in nature. There was a moment of stunned silence. His team exchanged confused looks, unsure of whether Elon was joking or serious. "Are you suggesting that we use the stars as a form of navigation?" one of the engineers asked, his eyebrows raised in disbelief. Elon nodded. "Why not? The ancients did it for centuries, navigating vast distances using the stars. And we've got the technology to map and track them in ways they could only dream of. Could we use something similar to help guide our self-driving cars?" The engineers looked at each other, skeptical but intrigued. One of them, a senior lead engineer, spoke up. "It's unconventional, but I suppose it's worth looking into. We've already integrated radar and cameras, but this could be a different approach to adding redundancy to our systems." Elon smiled. "Exactly. It's not about replacing the current systems, it's about adding another layer of reliability. Let's explore it. Worst case, we learn something new. Best case, we make a breakthrough." As the meeting progressed, the idea that had started as a child's innocent question slowly began to take shape into something more substantial. The team agreed to run some preliminary tests to see if the concept had any merit. That night, as Elon lay in bed, he couldn't help but think about how this entire journey had begun. A simple, offhand remark from his 4-year-old son had led to a new exploration, one that could change everything. X had no idea that his question, posed innocently as a child, would soon spark one of the most revolutionary innovations in the history of autonomous driving. And the world would soon learn that even the smallest voice could have the power to reshape the future. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Elon couldn't shake the memory of that night. The more he thought about it, the more he realized that X's simple question had struck a chord deep within him. He had always believed in the power of unconventional thinking. After all, SpaceX was founded on the idea of landing rockets back on Earth, something many had considered impossible. Why shouldn't the same approach be applied to Tesla's autonomous vehicles? The next morning, as the sun rose over the SpaceX headquarters, Elon couldn't wait any longer. He called a meeting with his lead engineers, the brightest minds in the world of technology. He needed to get their feedback on something unorthodox, something that could reshape the future of self-driving cars. "We need to talk," he began, addressing the group of engineers who sat gathered around the table. "I've been mulling over an idea, one that might sound a little strange at first, but I think it could be worth exploring." And it all started with a question from X. The engineers exchanged confused glances. A-Xii, 12, Elon's 4-year-old son, wasn't typically someone they'd expect to inspire a new line of thinking at Tesla. But if anyone could make the leap from a child's question to an industry-changing idea, it was Elon. "Here's the thing," Elon continued, pacing around the room. "What if we combined our current autonomous systems with something ancient? Like, I don't know, the stars. The ancients used the stars to navigate, and they did it with astonishing precision. Could we incorporate some form of celestial navigation into our self-driving technology? There was a brief silence. The idea sounded insane, completely out of left field. But this was Elon Musk they were talking about, and he had a track record of turning the impossible into reality. One of the engineers, a young and ambitious woman named Sophia, leaned forward in her chair, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. "You're talking about using the stars as a backup navigation system? Like a secondary layer of redundancy?" "Exactly," Elon replied, his voice brimming with excitement. "We have radar, cameras, LiDAR, and ultrasonic sensors on our vehicles already, but I want to take it a step further. Imagine if we could use the stars, or other celestial bodies, as a backup system when all else fails. The idea of redundancy, of making our cars smarter and more adaptable." Sophia's fingers flew across her tablet as she quickly calculated a few variables. "It's not entirely far-fetched," she said, nodding. "We already use GPS and satellite data to pinpoint locations, so why not expand that with some form of celestial tracking? Stars don't move, they're incredibly consistent, and with the right technology, we could use them as another reference point for navigation." Elon's eyes lit up. That's the spirit. The stars could serve as an ultimate backup, especially in environments where GPS signals are weak or blocked. Think about dense city streets or tunnels. GPS can sometimes be unreliable in those situations. The room erupted into conversation. Engineers began discussing the feasibility of such an idea, and the more they talked, the more excited they became. The concept of integrating celestial navigation into autonomous driving systems had the potential to be revolutionary, but there were still countless hurdles to overcome. "We'd need to develop a system that could track the movement of celestial bodies in real time," said Sophia. "And then we'd have to combine that data with the car's existing navigation system in a way that wouldn't overload the processor." "Correct," Elon responded, nodding. "But I think the payoff could be worth it. Imagine a Tesla that could drive itself with a level of precision that no other car could match, whether on Earth or, eventually, in space. This could be the first step in developing a truly autonomous system for everything, not just cars." The idea was beginning to take root. And as the conversation progressed, Elon began to see the potential. This wasn't just a backup system for self-driving cars. This could be the beginning of a new kind of autonomous vehicle, one that could adapt to any environment, any terrain, and any challenge. Elon could already picture it in his mind, Teslas driving through the streets of a bustling city, seamlessly navigating tight corners and crowded intersections, all while relying on a combination of advanced sensors and celestial navigation. It was a concept that seemed so far out of reach, but with enough time, effort, and innovation, it could become a reality. As the meeting wrapped up, Elon felt a sense of exhilaration. This wasn't just another incremental improvement to Tesla's self-driving cars. It was a paradigm shift. He could see it now, the spark of something truly revolutionary. That night, after the meeting, Elon found himself reflecting on the journey ahead. He had always believed in thinking big, in pushing the boundaries of what was possible. But this idea, one that had started as a simple question from his son, had the potential to change everything. His mind raced as he thought about the possibilities. He imagined a future where self-driving cars were so advanced that they could not only navigate the streets but also handle situations that today's technology couldn't even begin to solve. Whether it was a lost GPS signal, a new planet, or even an asteroid, a Tesla powered by celestial navigation could conquer any obstacle. But before any of that could happen, he would need to convince his team to take the idea seriously. This wasn't going to be an easy sell. After all, celestial navigation was not something they had ever considered before. It was an uncharted territory, a wild idea that could either fail spectacularly or change the world. And yet, Elon was certain about one thing: if anyone could make this work, it was his team at Tesla. They were the innovators, the dreamers, the ones who had already defied the odds in so many ways. The next day, he called for another meeting. This time, he wasn't just asking for opinions. He was going to lay out a plan, an ambitious, audacious plan to begin development on a new navigation system for Tesla's self-driving cars. The stars, after all, were just the beginning. As he looked out the window of his office, the night sky stretched out before him, filled with endless possibilities. The stars, which had guided explorers for centuries, were now calling to him, offering a new path, a new direction. And he was ready to take it. As days turned into weeks, the idea that had seemed so outlandish in the beginning began to take shape. Elon Musk, always driven by a thirst for innovation, found himself consumed by the thought of integrating celestial navigation into Tesla's self-driving systems. But the road ahead was long, and he knew the team needed time, resources, and perhaps a little more convincing. He gathered his engineers and designers for the first official brainstorming session on the celestial navigation project. They sat in the same room, but the mood was different now. What had once seemed like a whimsical suggestion from a 4-year-old was starting to feel more like the next big leap in technology. Elon wasted no time getting to the heart of the matter. "All right, team. We're here because I believe we can do something groundbreaking. We're talking about adding an entirely new layer of reliability to our self-driving cars, using celestial bodies to help guide them. I know it sounds crazy, but remember, crazy is often where we find the real breakthroughs." A few engineers exchanged hesitant glances. Celestial navigation. In 2025. It was an idea straight out of a science fiction novel. Still, the look in Elon's eyes was familiar, passionate, visionary, and unyielding. Sophia, the engineer who had been particularly interested in the idea, raised her hand. "I've done some preliminary research," she said. "The concept isn't as far-fetched as it seems. We already use satellites for GPS, and there are tools that allow us to track the position of stars and planets with incredible accuracy. The challenge would be incorporating that data into our system in real time." Elon nodded. "Exactly. We have the technology, but it's a matter of application. Our existing navigation systems rely heavily on external data, GPS, radar, cameras, and LiDAR. We need to think beyond that. Imagine this: what if we could use the stars to guide our cars in areas where GPS is blocked or unreliable? Think about the challenges our cars face in dense urban environments or tunnels." Sophia and the others began to see the potential. If they could create a system that used celestial bodies to assist in navigation, they could avoid the problem of GPS dropouts or interference in tricky environments. It was, after all, a technology that had been around for centuries, used by sailors, explorers, and astronauts alike. Could it work for self-driving cars? "We could create a map of the stars," one engineer suggested. "It would be similar to how our system currently processes radar and sensor data, but instead of relying solely on terrestrial signals, we could integrate a celestial reference. We could even factor in the rotation of the Earth and account for different times of day and year." The conversation grew more technical as the team brainstormed. They discussed how to measure the angles and positions of stars with onboard sensors, how to calibrate the system, and how to combine the celestial data with the existing sensors in a seamless way. It was a monumental task, but there was something exciting in the challenge. "What if we start small?" Elon suggested. "Let's integrate basic star maps into the system first. We don't need to make it perfect overnight. The goal is to test the concept in real-world conditions. Start with a small prototype and see how well it performs." The room buzzed with ideas. Everyone seemed energized, but also aware of the enormity of the task ahead. The stakes were high. If they could pull this off, they wouldn't just be enhancing self-driving cars, they would be creating a new standard for navigation, one that could extend beyond the limitations of modern technology and into the vastness of the universe itself. Elon's mind raced. This wasn't just about solving a technical challenge. This was about pushing the boundaries of what was possible, about forging a new future for humanity. If Tesla could master celestial navigation, it wouldn't just change how cars drove on Earth. It could change how humans interacted with space, how they explored the unknown. We've made the impossible possible before, Elon reminded the team. We landed rockets, we built electric cars that people actually want to drive, and we sent astronauts to the International Space Station. This is just the next step. We have the vision, and now we need to make it a reality. Over the following weeks, the team worked tirelessly to bring Elon's vision to life. They began experimenting with various systems to measure the positions of stars, and they developed algorithms to translate that data into usable navigation information. They used telescopes and high-precision cameras, and they even consulted with astronomers to ensure their calculations were as accurate as possible. It wasn't an easy task. The team faced countless challenges along the way. The stars weren't always visible due to weather or other factors, and sometimes the onboard sensors didn't pick up the right data. But the team kept pushing forward. Every time they encountered an obstacle, they found a way around it. They worked long hours, often late into the night, fueled by the belief that they were on the verge of something monumental. Elon, of course, was there every step of the way. He provided the vision, the direction, and the constant encouragement that kept the team motivated. But he also knew when to step back and let his engineers do the hard work. They were the ones who had to make the dream a reality. One day, after a particularly grueling testing session, Sophia came to Elon with some exciting news. "We did it," she said, her voice filled with excitement. "We've integrated a basic celestial navigation system into one of the test vehicles. It's working. The car is using the stars as a backup system, and we're seeing a significant improvement in navigation accuracy when GPS signals are weak." Elon couldn't help but smile. This was it, the moment when their hard work had started to pay off. But there was still much more to be done. "This is just the beginning," Elon said, his voice filled with determination. "We've got a long way to go, but we've proven that it's possible. Now let's push this to the next level." As the project progressed, Elon couldn't help but think back to the night when X's innocent question had sparked the idea. It was a reminder that inspiration could come from anywhere, even from a 4-year-old child. What began as a whimsical suggestion had now turned into a cutting-edge innovation that could revolutionize the way the world thought about navigation. And it was only a matter of time before the rest of the world would see what they had accomplished. The stars, once just distant points of light in the night sky, were now guiding the way forward for Tesla and for humanity. The dream of integrating celestial navigation into self-driving cars was no longer a far-fetched fantasy, it was on the verge of becoming a reality. With the celestial navigation system now integrated into a test vehicle, the team was eager to see how it performed in real-world conditions. The idea of using stars to guide a car through complex urban environments was ambitious, but they were more confident than ever. The prototype had passed initial tests, and now it was time to push it to the limits. Elon, ever the visionary, stood at the edge of the testing facility, gazing at the sleek Tesla prototype parked in front of him. It was a quiet, almost serene moment, one where he could feel the weight of what was about to happen. This wasn't just about testing a new system. This was about proving that humanity's relationship with the stars, once thought to be reserved for sailors and astronauts, could be adapted to the modern world in ways no one had ever imagined. The car sat in front of him like a piece of futuristic art, its body glistening under the artificial lights. The celestial navigation system, still in its early stages, was ready for the first real-world test. This test would determine whether the dream could become a reality. Elon turned to his team, who were standing nearby, each of them with a mix of excitement and nervousness on their faces. They had all poured their hearts into this project, and now it was time to see if it would work. "We're on the verge of something huge," Elon said, his voice calm but full of resolve. "Today, we test the impossible. Let's see how far we can push the limits." With a nod from the engineers, the car was powered on, and the testing began. The team had chosen a dense city environment to test the system, a place where GPS signals were often unreliable, and the car would need to rely heavily on its new celestial backup. The test route was mapped out with a series of tricky intersections, sharp turns, and narrow streets, a perfect place to test the car's ability to navigate without traditional GPS. As the car started moving, everyone watched intently. The vehicle hummed smoothly along the road, its sensors scanning the surroundings, its internal algorithms constantly updating its position based on the stars. The car's navigation system adjusted in real time, using the stars as one of its primary references. The result was a seamless integration of celestial and terrestrial data, which allowed the vehicle to move with precision. It was working. Elon felt a surge of excitement. He knew the car was still in the early stages of testing, but seeing it perform flawlessly in a real-world environment was a huge step forward. He had seen his team achieve incredible things before, but this was different. This wasn't just an improvement on existing technology, it was a brand new approach to autonomous navigation, one that had never been done before. But the real challenge would come when the car encountered situations where GPS signals would be completely blocked. In the heart of the city, surrounded by tall buildings, GPS could sometimes become erratic. The test would continue to push the boundaries, and Elon knew that these next moments would be critical. As the car approached a dense cluster of skyscrapers, Elon's heart began to race. The GPS signal dropped out entirely, leaving the car in complete uncertainty. The team held their breath. The stars were now the only navigation tool available. And then, something amazing happened. The car slowed down as its celestial navigation system kicked in. It wasn't as fast as before, but it was still moving. The onboard system calculated the car's position using the positions of nearby stars, adjusting in real time to the environment. Every turn, every shift in the road was corrected, as if the stars themselves were whispering directions to the car. Elon let out a quiet laugh, a mix of relief and awe. It was working. But the real test was still to come. The car was now approaching a tunnel, a place where both GPS and celestial navigation would be rendered useless. The tunnel had been purposely included in the test route to push the system to its absolute limits. If the car could make it through the tunnel and emerge safely on the other side, it would prove that the celestial navigation system had the potential to complement, and perhaps even replace, other forms of navigation entirely. As the car entered the tunnel, the team watched in silence. The bright lights of the tunnel illuminated the interior of the car as it drove in complete darkness, relying solely on its sensors and pre-programmed algorithms. There was no GPS, no stars to guide it, just the technology the team had built from the ground up. Time seemed to slow down as the car moved deeper into the tunnel. Every second felt like an eternity. The team anxiously watched the screen, which displayed data about the car's position, speed, and direction. The car continued to move, staying true to its course. It wasn't perfect, but it was still on track, using an advanced combination of sensors, radar, and its internal navigation system to find its way. When the car finally emerged from the tunnel, the room erupted into applause. The vehicle had navigated through a GPS and celestial-deprived environment without so much as a hiccup. Elon stepped forward, a broad smile on his face. "We've done it," he said. "The car has passed the most difficult part of the test. This is the future of autonomous driving." The team was ecstatic. They had just made history. The dream of integrating celestial navigation into self-driving cars had been realized, and it was working better than anyone had hoped. But this was only the beginning. There were still many challenges ahead, refining the system, expanding it to other environments, and integrating it with Tesla's global network. The team had only scratched the surface of what this new technology could do. They had proven that it was possible to navigate through the most challenging situations using a combination of sensors and celestial guidance, but now it was time to take it to the next level. Elon stood in front of his team, feeling a sense of pride that he rarely allowed himself to feel. "We've proven that we can build a car that drives itself, even when the world around it makes it impossible. This is just the beginning. The stars are guiding us to a future where navigation is seamless, where technology doesn't just adapt to the environment, it transforms it." He paused for a moment, looking at the sky above, as if the stars themselves were listening. "Let's change the world. As the team prepared for the next phase of testing, Elon couldn't help but reflect on how this all began, the spark of an idea from his 4-year-old son. In the end, it wasn't just the technology or the cars that mattered. It was about creating something that could fundamentally change the way humanity lived, worked, and traveled. And with celestial navigation, they were on the cusp of doing just that. The successful test had sent shockwaves through Tesla's research and development division. Elon Musk knew that the breakthrough they'd just made would reverberate far beyond the company's walls. This wasn't just about making a self-driving car smarter or more reliable. It was about reimagining how humanity interacts with technology on a fundamental level. As the news of the celestial navigation test spread, the world began to take notice. The media buzzed with headlines speculating about the implications of integrating star-based navigation into self-driving cars. Would this mark the dawn of a new era for transportation? Could celestial navigation one day help humanity journey beyond Earth? Elon's phone rang constantly. Journalists, investors, and industry leaders wanted to hear from him. The world was hungry for answers, and everyone wanted to know, what's next? Despite the frenzy, Elon remained focused. There was still so much work to be done. The test was just the beginning, and the real challenge now was scaling up the technology and refining it for mass adoption. The goal was no longer just a prototype, it was about creating a fully functioning system that could be implemented in Tesla cars worldwide. However, what caught Elon's attention the most wasn't the headlines or the accolades. It was the conversations happening behind the scenes within his own team. The celestial navigation system had opened a new frontier of possibility, but it had also raised new questions. Could this technology be used for more than just cars? Could it be adapted for other autonomous systems, such as drones or spacecraft? And what about space exploration? Could the system one day help astronauts navigate the far reaches of space? Elon sat down with his leadership team to discuss these possibilities. This is bigger than just cars, he said. We've cracked the code on celestial navigation here on Earth, but I believe it has the potential to extend far beyond that. What if this is the key to unlocking deeper space exploration, to making autonomous systems in space more reliable? The room fell silent. The idea was audacious, even by Elon's standards. But his team knew better than to dismiss him when he was on to something big. They had seen it happen before. We could integrate celestial navigation into autonomous drones, one of the engineers suggested. For deliveries, research, and even disaster recovery. If we could expand this technology to work in all kinds of environments, urban, rural, or even in outer space, there's no limit to what we could do. Elon nodded, his mind racing with possibilities. He had always been a champion of thinking beyond the limits of what was possible, and now it seemed as though the boundaries were shifting once again. The celestial navigation system they had developed for Tesla's self-driving cars could have a profound impact on industries far and wide. Drones could use the same principles to navigate through areas where GPS was unavailable, helping to deliver medical supplies to remote locations or provide emergency services after natural disasters. In the long term, space exploration could benefit from the same system, helping astronauts to navigate when they were too far from Earth to rely on traditional GPS signals. But there was still one hurdle to overcome. The celestial navigation system, while groundbreaking, wasn't perfect. It needed refinement. The team needed to work on improving its accuracy and reliability, especially in environments where conditions were less than ideal, areas with heavy cloud cover, pollution, or other atmospheric disruptions. These were the challenges they faced, but they were challenges Elon was more than willing to take on. That afternoon, Elon called a meeting with his senior engineers, scientists, and designers. The atmosphere in the room was electric, filled with excitement and anticipation. I want to move fast on this, Elon said, pacing in front of the whiteboard. We've got the technology, but now we need to test it on a larger scale. We need to push it into new environments. And most importantly, we need to make sure it's reliable and accurate under all conditions. If we can crack that, we can take this technology beyond Earth, into space. Sophia, the engineer who had been pivotal in integrating celestial navigation into Tesla's test vehicles, spoke up. We're already working on refining the algorithms to account for variables like atmospheric interference and weather patterns. The goal is to make the system not just a backup, but a reliable primary form of navigation. Elon stopped pacing and turned to face her. That's exactly what I want to hear. Let's make this the backbone of our system, not just an add-on. We'll use the stars, the planets, and even deep space objects to create the most advanced autonomous navigation system in the world. The team set to work immediately, pushing the boundaries of what was possible. Days turned into nights as they refined the technology, testing it in different environments and scenarios. They began working with astronomers and space agencies to obtain more accurate star maps and data. The celestial navigation system was evolving quickly, and it was clear that this was no longer just a project for self-driving cars. This was the start of something much larger. One of the key challenges was integrating the system with other autonomous technologies. For instance, how could they ensure that drones flying through remote or hostile environments would be able to use the celestial navigation system effectively? How could this technology be adapted for use in space stations or rovers on the surface of Mars? The team's progress was swift, and soon enough, they were ready to test the system in a new arena. Instead of relying solely on terrestrial sensors, they began working on an autonomous drone prototype, equipped with the celestial navigation system, to see if it could function as effectively in the air as it had on the ground. The test flights were nothing short of spectacular. The drone, guided by the stars, seamlessly navigated through areas where GPS was unavailable. Whether flying over dense forests, mountainous regions, or through clouds, the drone maintained its course with a level of precision that was previously thought impossible. The celestial navigation system had made it possible for the drone to not only fly in the most challenging conditions but to do so with unprecedented accuracy. It was at this moment that Elon realized the true potential of the technology. This wasn't just a breakthrough for autonomous cars, it was a breakthrough for the entire field of autonomous navigation. With celestial navigation, they could create systems that could operate anywhere on Earth and beyond. As the news of the drone tests spread, the world began to recognize the implications of the breakthrough. The possibility of autonomous vehicles, drones, and even spacecraft navigating with the stars opened up a whole new frontier for technology. But there was still much to be done. The dream of using celestial navigation to guide humanity's future was no longer just a vision, it was becoming a reality. The drone tests had been a resounding success, and with every passing day, the celestial navigation system continued to evolve. It was no longer just about cars on the ground or autonomous delivery drones, it was about extending the boundaries of possibility. Elon Musk, as always, was thinking far beyond what was right in front of him. The success of the test flights had sparked a new vision. Could the celestial navigation system be adapted for use in human space exploration? The idea had been on Elon's mind for some time, but it was now more pressing than ever. The technology they were developing had far-reaching potential, not just on Earth, but also in space. The stars, the planets, the galaxies, they could serve as navigation points for spacecraft that would one day venture far beyond Earth's atmosphere. With the ongoing development of SpaceX's Starship program, Elon saw an opportunity to integrate celestial navigation into the spacecraft systems. The celestial navigation system would no longer be a backup or a supplementary tool, it could become an integral part of deep space travel. The idea of astronauts navigating through the vast expanse of space with the help of the stars seemed almost poetic, yet it was grounded in the hard science of what they were building. Elon brought together his top SpaceX engineers and the Tesla team working on celestial navigation. The meeting was held in one of the SpaceX facilities, where the engineers could look out the window and see the rockets they were working on, dreams of humanity's future among the stars, sitting just beyond their reach. Think about it, Elon began, his voice filled with the excitement of a new possibility. In deep space, we won't always have the luxury of traditional GPS or Earth-based signals. We can't rely on anything like we do here on Earth. But what we do have are the stars, unchanging, constant guides across the cosmos. Why not use that to our advantage? The room went quiet. It was a bold proposition, but one that could very well be the next giant leap for space exploration. They had already developed the technology to use the stars for navigation on Earth, so why not apply the same principle to space? It would be a game changer. One of the senior SpaceX engineers, Sam, spoke up. The challenge is adapting the system to account for the vast distances and different conditions in space. A lot of the work we've done so far has been terrestrial, and we would need to develop new algorithms to account for the different celestial bodies and how we track them in deep space. Elon nodded. Exactly. But the groundwork is already laid. If we can figure out how to integrate it with the spacecraft's navigation systems, we could create a self-sufficient system that can guide astronauts no matter where they are in the galaxy. It would be a whole new era of exploration. Sophia, the engineer who had been instrumental in the development of the celestial navigation system for the Tesla vehicles, raised her hand. We'd need to collaborate with astronomers, space agencies, and anyone who has access to detailed star maps. The stars we use for navigation on Earth are only the beginning. To operate in space, we would need to build a much more comprehensive map of the entire sky, one that accounts for the stars, planets, and even distant galaxies. Elon's eyes lit up. That's exactly the kind of challenge I'm looking for. A map of the entire sky, every celestial body, every star, every asteroid. A system that's as comprehensive and detailed as the one we're building here on Earth. The meeting continued for hours, with everyone brainstorming ideas and possibilities. It became clear that this project wasn't just about autonomous navigation. It was about revolutionizing how humanity could navigate the cosmos. A celestial navigation system could become the cornerstone of future interplanetary and even interstellar travel. The potential applications were staggering. Space missions could use this system to travel between planets within our solar system. It could assist in landing spacecraft on distant moons, guiding them even when traditional methods of navigation weren't possible. In the longer term, it could even be used to navigate spacecraft traveling beyond the solar system, toward distant stars and galaxies. This wasn't just about improving navigation, it was about making the impossible possible. Weeks passed as the teams at SpaceX and Tesla continued to collaborate. They began integrating the celestial navigation system into SpaceX's Starship, which was still in development. The engineers worked around the clock, incorporating the system into Starship's onboard computers, sensors, and propulsion systems. Elon, while pleased with the progress, couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. He felt an undeniable pull to push the system to its limits. He wasn't just content with adapting it for space travel, he wanted to break through every barrier and see just how far they could go. The stars were the limit, and he was determined to reach them. One day, as he sat in the SpaceX mission control room, he received a call from one of his senior engineers. The testing phase for Starship's integration with the celestial navigation system was about to begin. It's time, the engineer said. We're ready to test the system in space-like conditions. We've set up the simulation environment. This will give us the closest thing to real space travel without actually leaving the atmosphere. Elon could hardly contain his excitement. This was it, the first step towards something monumental. He gathered his team in the control room, and together, they watched as Starship prepared for its first test with the celestial navigation system. The simulation was set to take place in a virtual environment that mimicked the conditions of deep space. Starship would be launched in the simulation, with its navigation system relying solely on the celestial guidance provided by the stars. As the countdown began, the team watched closely. The simulation kicked off, and Starship began its journey through the simulated cosmos. The celestial navigation system activated, and the spacecraft's position and trajectory were tracked and adjusted based on the positions of the stars. For the first few minutes, everything went smoothly. The spacecraft adjusted its course with perfect precision, using the stars to navigate just as the system had done on Earth. The team watched with bated breath as Starship approached a distant planet, an object in the simulation designed to test the system's ability to guide spacecraft to a target. Starship made a perfect course correction, aligning itself with the simulated planet. The system had done exactly what it was supposed to, proving that celestial navigation could work in the vast emptiness of space. The room erupted into applause. It was a monumental achievement, proof that this system could work not just on Earth, but beyond our planet as well. Elon stood at the front of the room, his face lit up with a satisfied grin. This is just the beginning. The stars are waiting, and we're going to reach them. The success of Starship's first simulation with the celestial navigation system sent waves of excitement through SpaceX and Tesla. It wasn't just a technological achievement, it was a milestone that would fundamentally change how humans explore space. For Elon Musk, the possibilities were endless. They had not only redefined navigation on Earth, but they had also opened a door to interplanetary travel. The dream of reaching Mars, and beyond, was closer than ever. Back at SpaceX headquarters, the engineers were already hard at work refining the system further. They had proven that celestial navigation could guide a spacecraft through deep space, but now they had to make sure it was scalable, robust, and capable of handling the unpredictable nature of the cosmos. Space missions weren't just theoretical anymore. They were happening, and soon, the system would be put to the ultimate test. Elon sat in his office, reviewing reports and projections on a large digital screen. He looked over the performance data from the simulation. The system had exceeded expectations, but the real challenge now was taking it beyond simulations and into real-world space travel. Starship was designed to eventually carry humans to Mars and other destinations, and that was the ultimate proving ground for celestial navigation. Are we on track for the next round of tests? Elon asked as he looked up from the screen. Yes, replied Rachel, the lead engineer overseeing the integration of the celestial navigation system. We're gearing up for a test that will take the system beyond simulated space. This time, we'll put it into a real-world scenario. We're planning a test flight with one of our unmanned spacecraft, and will rely entirely on the celestial navigation system for guidance. Elon smiled. This was it. The test that would prove once and for all whether their technology could withstand the rigors of actual space conditions. This test wasn't just a technical challenge, it was a symbolic one. If they could successfully navigate an unmanned spacecraft through the vastness of space using the stars alone, it would be a monumental step toward making human space exploration a reality. In the days leading up to the test, the entire SpaceX team was on edge. Everyone knew how important this was. The test wasn't just about proving the system's functionality, it was about demonstrating that humanity could venture further into space, exploring new frontiers without being tethered to Earth. The test flight was scheduled to take place in the next week, and Elon was determined to be there. The team made final preparations for the spacecraft's launch, running simulations and checks to ensure everything was in place. Starship, now fully equipped with the celestial navigation system, was ready for its first true test flight beyond Earth's atmosphere. The day of the test arrived. The launch pad was alive with activity. Technicians scurried around, making final adjustments to the spacecraft while engineers checked systems one last time. In the control room, the countdown clock was ticking down, and Elon stood at the front of the room, watching intently. Everything's looking good, Rachel reported. The navigation system is locked in, and we're ready for launch. Elon nodded, his mind focused on the magnitude of the moment. This wasn't just about SpaceX, it was about the future of human exploration. The stars had always seemed so far away, untouchable, unreachable. But now, with this breakthrough, they were within grasp. The countdown reached 0, and the rocket engines roared to life. Starship launched into the sky, soaring higher and higher until it broke through the atmosphere and into space. As the spacecraft ascended, the celestial navigation system began working its magic, calculating positions based on the stars and adjusting the spacecraft's course accordingly. Outside, the sky was an endless expanse of blackness, dotted with brilliant stars. Inside the spacecraft, the systems were running smoothly, guided by the stars that had been charted in the celestial navigation system. The unmanned spacecraft smoothly adjusted its trajectory, moving toward its destination with precision and grace. As the spacecraft traveled further into space, Elon watched the telemetry data on his screen. Every course correction made by the system was accurate, precise, and instantaneous. The spacecraft's journey through space was proving to be flawless. Hours into the test, the spacecraft had successfully navigated a series of waypoints, moving toward a distant satellite that had been placed in orbit for the purpose of the test. The celestial navigation system continued to guide it perfectly, ensuring the spacecraft was on course. Finally, after several hours of travel, the spacecraft arrived at its destination. The test was a success. The celestial navigation system had worked just as they had hoped, guiding the spacecraft with pinpoint accuracy and demonstrating that navigation using the stars was not only possible, it was practical. The control room erupted into applause as the spacecraft's successful arrival was confirmed. Elon's heart raced with exhilaration. The future of space exploration was here, and they had just taken the first major step toward it. "We've done it," Elon said, his voice steady but filled with excitement. "This is just the beginning. The stars are no longer out of reach. Humanity is going to explore the universe." The engineers and technicians continued to celebrate, but in the back of Elon's mind, he was already thinking ahead. This test had been a huge success, but it was only one piece of the puzzle. The true challenge would be making sure that these systems could work reliably on a larger scale. They needed to be ready for human crews, for extended missions, for the challenges of long-duration spaceflight. In the weeks that followed, the team began preparations for the next phase of testing, a manned mission. The goal was to integrate the celestial navigation system fully into Starship's systems and prepare it for future interplanetary missions. But even as the work progressed, Elon couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. They had come so far, and yet, the journey was just beginning. He knew that the system they had developed wasn't just a breakthrough in navigation, it was a tool for unlocking the future. With the celestial navigation system in place, humanity could go beyond the Moon and Mars. They could reach new stars, new worlds, and even new galaxies. The vastness of space was no longer an obstacle, it was a frontier waiting to be explored. As he gazed out of his office window at the rockets preparing for future missions, Elon felt an overwhelming sense of possibility. The universe was out there, and humanity was finally ready to explore it. The success of Starship's unmanned test flight marked a monumental turning point for SpaceX and humanity's space aspirations. As Elon Musk and his team celebrated the victory, the weight of what had been accomplished hung heavy in the air. For the first time, the possibility of long-duration, interplanetary travel was no longer a distant dream. But with every new frontier reached, new challenges emerged, and Elon knew the hardest part was yet to come, sending humans beyond Earth's atmosphere and ensuring their survival in deep space. The celestial navigation system had proven its worth during the unmanned test, but adapting it to the unique needs of human space travel posed an entirely different set of obstacles. Unlike unmanned missions, which could rely on pre-programmed protocols and immediate data analysis, human missions required constant feedback, adaptability, and most crucially, safety. The astronauts themselves would be the ones interacting with the system, making decisions and taking action based on its guidance. To make this possible, the celestial navigation system would need to be seamlessly integrated into Starship's interface. Not only would the stars guide the ship, but the crew would need to understand how to interpret and trust the system's data. The challenge was clear, the system couldn't just be functional, it had to be intuitive. Elon gathered his top engineers and astronaut advisors for a series of meetings, determining the next steps for integrating the system into a manned mission. The astronauts who would eventually board the Starship would not just be travelers, they would be pioneers. It was critical that they could fully trust the system, even when venturing far beyond the Earth. "We're talking about a leap into the unknown here," Elon said, pacing in front of the gathered team. "The stars will guide them, but they will also be relying on their training and judgment. We have to make sure that the celestial navigation system is more than just a tool, it needs to be a partner in their journey. "We're planning a mission to Mars," Rachel, the lead engineer, responded, "and that's only the beginning. After that, the moon and other moons in the solar system will be on the table. But those missions, especially Mars, are going to require much more than just technology. It's about trust between the astronauts and the technology we've built." Elon nodded. "Exactly. So we need to prepare for the long haul. Let's make sure the interface is designed for them to trust it instinctively. I want the system to be as automatic as possible. The celestial navigation system should be able to adapt to anything, just like they do." For the next few months, the team worked tirelessly. Starship was modified to accommodate the celestial navigation system for crewed missions. It became more than just a tool, it was incorporated into the spacecraft's primary interface. Screens in the cockpit now displayed real-time data from the stars, including positions, movements, and adjustments the spacecraft needed to make. New features were added that allowed astronauts to request additional navigational information, like adjusting the trajectory for safety or recalculating routes in case of unforeseen obstacles. Meanwhile, the astronauts themselves underwent intensive training. They would learn to read star maps, understand celestial mechanics, and trust the system to guide them when they were millions of miles from Earth. For many of them, this was an entirely new way of thinking about navigation. No longer would they rely on Earth-based systems, they would be navigating in an entirely new and alien environment. Astronauts like Sarah, one of SpaceX's top candidates for the Mars mission, were excited but also nervous. "We've trained to land on the moon and explore low Earth orbit, but this is different," she said during one of the astronaut training sessions. "We'll be going to Mars, and who knows where after that. Having the stars as our guide is something we've never really considered before." "It's going to be just like reading a map," Rachel responded, as she walked the group through the system's features. "Only this map is the universe itself, and we're going to use it to find our way. Don't worry, you'll get the hang of it. The system is designed to be simple, intuitive. Your job is to make the decisions based on what it tells you." While astronauts trained in the system's operation, SpaceX continued refining the navigation system to ensure reliability. Testing was rigorous, with simulations designed to replicate every possible scenario. The team was focused on creating an experience where astronauts could not only trust the system's navigation but also be confident in the system's ability to handle uncharted territory. The day of the first manned test flight was approaching. The crew, Sarah, Daniel, and Mark, had completed their training, and the Starship was fully equipped with the new celestial navigation system. This mission would not be to Mars just yet, but it was a critical step in that direction. The team would venture to the moon to test the system under more challenging conditions, taking the first human steps toward interplanetary travel. The mission was designed to last for several weeks, with the crew conducting scientific experiments, testing life support systems, and refining their celestial navigation skills as they orbited the moon. Elon knew that this mission, while not as ambitious as the Mars mission, would still push the boundaries of human exploration. If they could make it work here, it would be the proving ground for Mars. On launch day, the atmosphere was tense but filled with hope. Starship stood on the launch pad, its sleek, silver exterior gleaming in the sunlight. The crew boarded the spacecraft, and the final checks were completed. Elon and the team gathered in the mission control room, watching as the countdown clock ticked away. As the clock hit 0, the rockets ignited, and Starship soared into the sky. The mission had begun. The journey to the moon was smooth, and the celestial navigation system worked flawlessly, guiding Starship with incredible accuracy as it made its way into lunar orbit. The crew marveled at the precision of the system as they approached the moon's surface, adjusting their trajectory based on the star positions in the sky. The lunar landing, although not part of the primary mission goals, was also a success. The crew used the celestial navigation system to make a pinpoint landing on the surface of the moon, proving that even in such a distant and unknown environment, they could trust the stars to guide them home. Back on Earth, Elon watched the mission unfold with a sense of awe. They had come so far, and the stars were no longer just distant points of light in the sky, they were now companions on a journey into the future. This was only the beginning. They had proven that humanity could rely on the stars to navigate the unknown, and with each step they took, they were getting closer to reaching Mars and the farthest reaches of the solar system. The success of the lunar mission was a monumental achievement, but it was just the beginning. SpaceX had proved that the celestial navigation system worked under real-world conditions, guiding astronauts across vast distances. Now, Elon Musk was focused on the next giant leap, sending humans to Mars. The success of the Moon mission had been critical, but Mars posed entirely different challenges. The distance, the environment, the radiation, every aspect of the mission would require innovation, resilience, and a level of precision never before achieved in human space exploration. Elon's team had already begun working on Starship's enhancements for a Mars mission, focusing on systems that could withstand the harsh conditions of deep space. The spacecraft's life support system had to be capable of providing oxygen, food, and water for months, possibly years. Radiation protection was paramount, and the crew's health and well-being had to be guaranteed. The celestial navigation system would need to handle not just the journey from Earth to Mars, but also the intricacies of navigating in deep space, away from the gravitational pull of Earth and other celestial bodies. The challenge was enormous. A Mars mission would require more than just technological advancements, it would require a new mindset. Elon and his team needed to shift from the initial optimism of exploration to the hard realities of long-duration space travel. No one had ever traveled to Mars before. No one knew what kind of obstacles might arise along the way. The crew, the technology, and the systems all had to be flawless. Elon sat in a conference room at SpaceX headquarters, surrounded by a team of engineers, astronauts, and scientists. They were discussing the mission architecture for Mars, everything from the launch and the trip itself, to landing, setting up a colony, and returning home. "We're planning a mission to Mars that could last anywhere from 18 months to 3 years, Elon said, looking around at the team. "This is a big undertaking. We need a robust plan, one that accounts for every possible variable, from fuel to food to radiation exposure." Rachel, the lead engineer for Starship, spoke next. "The celestial navigation system has proven its reliability for shorter missions. But for Mars, we're dealing with a much greater distance, and we need to account for more variables, like planetary drift and the constant movement of celestial bodies. The system has to be incredibly precise." "We've made adjustments," Elon responded. "We've expanded the system's capability to account for the complexities of deep space. The real challenge here is not just getting there, it's ensuring we can stay on course for the entire journey and then safely return to Earth." Daniel, one of the astronauts who had been part of the Moon mission, added, "The crew will need to have full confidence in the navigation system. We'll be out there for months, far away from Earth. If something goes wrong, we'll have to rely on this system and on our ability to adapt and make decisions on the fly." "Exactly," Elon agreed. "The key to the success of the Mars mission is trust, trust in the technology, trust in the team, and trust in our ability to overcome the challenges ahead." For weeks, the team worked around the clock to finalize every aspect of the Mars mission. Every possible scenario was considered: what to do in the event of a system failure, how to handle communication delays between Earth and Mars, and how to maintain morale during the long journey. The crew would be isolated for months, relying on each other and the technology to survive. Simulations became more intense, testing the limits of Starship's capabilities. The celestial navigation system was continually refined, taking into account the dynamic nature of deep space. The system would need to be adaptive and able to handle the variations in star positions, orbital mechanics, and potential obstacles along the way. The day of the first Mars mission launch approached. The crew had been selected, and the spacecraft was ready for its final preparations. Sarah, Daniel, and Mark, who had been part of the successful lunar mission, were now set to become the first humans to venture toward Mars. They had trained for years, learning not just how to operate Starship, but how to survive in space for months at a time. They were ready for the unknown. The launch took place at the Kennedy Space Center, and the atmosphere was electric. Millions of people around the world watched as Starship prepared to launch. Elon stood in the control room, watching the telemetry data as the rocket was fueled and the final systems checks were completed. The countdown began, and as it reached 0, the engines ignited, sending Starship into the sky with a powerful roar. The crew aboard felt the immense force of the launch as the spacecraft ascended through the atmosphere, carrying them toward a journey that would change the course of human history. The first few days of the mission went smoothly, as the crew became accustomed to their new environment. Starship's powerful engines pushed them farther from Earth with each passing moment, and the celestial navigation system kept them on course, guiding them through the vastness of space with precision. During the first week, the crew experienced the isolation of deep space. As they moved farther from Earth, communication delays grew longer, and the reality of their journey set in. The stars outside their windows became their constant companions, a reminder that they were venturing into the unknown. For Sarah, Daniel, and Mark, the celestial navigation system was not just a tool, it was their lifeline. Every adjustment it made brought them closer to their destination. As they continued on their journey, the crew encountered their first major challenge. A solar storm was detected, and the celestial navigation system needed to adjust their trajectory to avoid the intense radiation. Starship's shielding was designed to protect the crew, but the storm would still disrupt their path. They relied on the system to calculate the safest route, and within hours, Starship was back on course. "It's working," Sarah said, looking at the readouts on the display. "We're safe, and we're still on track." Mark, who had been quietly monitoring the situation, nodded. "This system is incredible. We've faced a major obstacle, but it handled it without a hitch." Elon's voice came through the comms, "How are you all doing?" "We're good, Elon," Sarah replied. "We're back on course, and the system handled the storm perfectly. It's more than we could have hoped for." "Great," Elon said. "Keep pushing forward. We're with you every step of the way." Days turned into weeks, and the crew continued their journey toward Mars. The celestial navigation system guided them every step of the way, ensuring they remained on course despite the vast, empty space between Earth and Mars. Every system was functioning perfectly, and the crew was growing more confident in their ability to complete the mission. But as they drew closer to Mars, a new challenge loomed, one that no one could have predicted. As Starship pushed steadily through the silent void of space, Mars grew larger in the distance, a rust-colored orb floating in the darkness, radiating mystery and promise. The celestial navigation system hummed quietly in the background, constantly adjusting the spacecraft's trajectory based on the stars. The crew's confidence was high, bolstered by weeks of flawless performance. But deep in the belly of Starship, within the AI core that processed astronomical data, a pattern was emerging, one that no one had anticipated. It started with Sarah. During her routine system check, she noticed an anomaly in the data logs. A strange signal had been picked up by the ship's long-range sensors, a repeating sequence buried within the natural radiation coming from Mars' surface. "Daniel, take a look at this," Sarah said, her brow furrowed as she magnified the data feed. He leaned over her shoulder. "Is that a transmission?" "That's what it looks like. It's not random. It's repeating at regular intervals, almost like Morse code, but in a binary pattern." Mark joined them. "Could it be interference? Maybe a reflection of our own systems?" "I thought so at first," Sarah replied, "but the source is coming directly from Mars' surface, not bouncing off the atmosphere. And get this, it's locked onto a specific set of coordinates. Somewhere near Elysium Planitia." Silence fell over the cabin. The implications were staggering. A signal, structured, deliberate, coming from Mars. No active landers were located in that region, and nothing from previous missions had reported activity there. Sarah uploaded the data to the ship's central AI, which ran it through multiple analysis protocols. Within minutes, the AI confirmed it, the signal was real, and it wasn't natural. They patched the data through to Earth, but due to the communication delay, it would be over 20 minutes before they got a response from Mission Control. In the meantime, the team had to decide, follow the original flight plan, or adjust trajectory toward the source of the signal. This could be a glitch, Mark said cautiously. Or worse, a trap, some kind of system malfunction that leads us off course. Or it could be the most important discovery in human history, Sarah said, her voice steady but filled with wonder. If there's someone, on Mars sending a signal, don't we have a responsibility to investigate? Elon's voice finally came through the comms, delayed but clear, we see the signal. Proceed with extreme caution. Adjust course to the signal coordinates, but don't initiate landing until you confirm environmental safety. This is historic. Be smart. Be safe. The crew quickly rerouted. The celestial navigation system adjusted the flight path with seamless precision, aligning their descent trajectory with the exact coordinates of the signal. It was a risky move, deviating from the established landing zone, but the crew trusted the system, and their instincts. As Starship descended through the thin Martian atmosphere, the tension was palpable. The dust storms common on Mars were mercifully absent, and visibility was high. The red terrain below stretched endlessly in all directions, cratered, cracked, and utterly alien. Then, they saw it. A structure. Not large, not metallic, but unmistakably unnatural. A geometric formation carved into the Martian rock. It looked ancient, weathered, half buried in the sand. But something about it was symmetrical, intentional. The signal was coming directly from within it. Are we seriously looking at ruins? Daniel asked, eyes wide behind his visor. Sarah scanned the data on her console. No known missions, no landers, no debris fields. Whatever that is, it's not human-made, not recently anyway. The celestial navigation system pinged again, indicating the structure as the source of an electromagnetic field strong enough to interfere with local communications and navigation. It was as if the object was broadcasting, and waiting. The crew secured their suits and prepared to disembark. Starship landed gently a few hundred meters from the structure. The ground crunched beneath their boots as they stepped out into the harsh Martian environment, each step kicking up fine red dust. As they approached, the signal grew stronger. Sarah held up her scanner. The entrance is just ahead. There's a tunnel, maybe natural, maybe carved. We'll only go as far as the first chamber. The tunnel was narrow but passable. The walls were strangely smooth, as if shaped by tools rather than erosion. Faint symbols, unlike anything on Earth, lined the walls in uneven patterns. The further they went, the colder it got. Finally, the passage opened into a small chamber. At its center stood a monolithic stone, glowing faintly with an inner light. Around it, more symbols, more carvings. But most striking of all was the quiet hum emanating from the stone itself. It was the source of the signal. Mark took a cautious step forward. This is no ordinary rock. Sarah knelt beside it, pulling out a portable scanner. This thing is emitting radiation in controlled pulses, like a beacon. It's not transmitting randomly, it's transmitting a message. The scan confirmed it, a pattern encoded into electromagnetic bursts. Binary sequences, looping. A language of sorts. Back on Earth, Elon received the data dump and immediately summoned his top cryptographers and AI linguists. The celestial navigation system, now reprogrammed with the data from the Martian artifact, helped translate parts of the signal, enough to understand the basics. Coordinates, Elon muttered as he stared at the decoded fragment. It's a map. To where? That was the million-dollar question. The signal included star patterns and positions, but not for current configurations. The celestial bodies in the transmission were thousands of years out of date. This wasn't just a message, it was a memory. A record of a journey, perhaps even a warning. Back on Mars, the crew stood in silent awe. This changes everything, Sarah whispered. We thought we were the first ones here, but maybe we're just the first ones to come back. Elon's voice crackled through the delay. Prepare to stay. You're not just explorers anymore, you're historians, archaeologists. Whatever that place is, it holds answers. And the stars just became a whole lot more mysterious. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? As the dust settled around Starship's landing site, the crew stood frozen before the alien structure carved into the Martian bedrock. The hum of the monolithic stone they found inside the chamber wasn't just sound, it resonated deep in their chests, vibrating like a heartbeat from the past. The signal was still transmitting, and the crew had barely scratched the surface of its meaning. But one thing was clear, they were not alone in their curiosity. Something, or someone, had left this message for future visitors. Inside the command module of Starship, Sarah, Daniel, and Mark began working around the clock to decode the transmission. SpaceX's AI on Earth, paired with quantum computing resources from Tesla's R&D division, was parsing the signal simultaneously. The celestial navigation system played a pivotal role in all of this. It was no longer just guiding them, it was now helping translate alien star maps, overlaying the incoming data with known constellations and galactic coordinates. But the stars in the message didn't match any current alignment. We're looking at star positions from thousands of years ago, Daniel explained, spinning a 3D hologram of the night sky in Starship's control room. Whoever sent this, they were using an ancient celestial map. One that doesn't match our modern sky. Mark added, and if we align the stars from the signal with those historic positions, it points to something beyond our solar system. Sarah zoomed in on the hologram, adjusting the lens. Look here. This star, it's dead now. Went supernova a few hundred years ago. But in this map, it's alive. Which means this message isn't just old, it's ancient. Back on Earth, Elon watched the live feed from the Starship. He was silent, processing the enormity of what he was seeing. This wasn't just a discovery, it was evidence of intelligent life, or at the very least, a highly advanced civilization that once existed and had the ability to map the stars with incredible precision. We need to understand the purpose of this message, Elon said to his inner circle during a late-night meeting in the SpaceX war room. Is it a warning? A guide? A memory? This could change the way humanity sees its place in the universe forever. More patterns emerged from the signal over the next 72 hours. Using a combination of pattern recognition, linguistic modeling, and mathematical constants, the AI began unlocking fragments of language. Not words exactly, but universally shared concepts, numbers, orbital paths, gravitational fields. It was like the alien version of Rosetta Stone, and they were beginning to crack it. Meanwhile, on Mars, the crew continued their cautious investigation of the structure. Mark was the first to notice it, a hidden passage behind the monolith. After running environmental scans and confirming the structural integrity, the team ventured deeper into the Martian chamber. What they found was even more mind-blowing. Dozens of pillars lined the chamber, each etched with star maps, planetary alignments, and geometrical diagrams. Some resembled solar systems, others resembled energy waveforms, as though they were describing a form of propulsion or energy manipulation unknown to current human science. This place, Sarah whispered, it's not a temple. It's a library. And the signal? It wasn't just a beacon. It was an index. A key to unlocking the knowledge contained in the room. Back at Mission Control, data streamed in as the Starship's onboard scanners uploaded high-definition images and radiation profiles of the chamber. Elon's top scientists and engineers leaned over monitors, their jaws slack. The designs embedded in the rock showed sophisticated knowledge of astrophysics, black holes, wormholes, faster-than-light travel theories, depicted in pictographs that defied any known origin. Sarah activated her comms. Elon, we've catalogued over 50 symbols. The same ones repeat across different star charts. It's like they were tracking movement. Migration patterns. Not of people, of entire civilizations. You're telling me they weren't just mapping stars, they were using them as highways? Elon asked, pacing behind the mission control monitors. That's what it looks like, she replied. And one of those highways ends here. Suddenly, the chamber lights began to dim. A low-frequency pulse echoed through the room, and the monolith at the center began to glow brighter. The celestial navigation system inside Starship picked up the spike instantly. It's shifting frequencies, Daniel reported, staring at the dashboard. It's like, it's reacting to us. To our presence. The crew backed up, stunned, as the monolith projected a faint beam of light into the air, forming a rotating star map, but this time, it was moving. It wasn't showing the past or the present. It was showing the future. New constellations rotated across the beam, highlighting paths not yet taken, systems not yet visited. The crew stared in silence as coordinates appeared, one after another. They were routes, courses through the galaxy. One coordinate blinked 3 times. Sarah recognized the pattern immediately. That's our trajectory. It's highlighting our ship. Which means, this whole thing knew we'd be here. Mark looked toward the glowing beam. It's not just a map. It's an invitation. Elon, watching from Earth, stood up. We need to expand the mission. This is bigger than Mars. Bigger than Starship. We need to find out where this leads. The world was watching. News of the signal had broken out, and theories flooded the internet. Ancient aliens, lost civilizations, cosmic breadcrumbs, it didn't matter what people believed. For the first time in history, humanity had physical evidence that they were not alone. And more importantly, they had directions. Over the following days, the Starship crew began preparations for Phase 2 of the mission. The celestial navigation system was updated with the new star paths extracted from the artifact. Simulations were run. Power systems tested. Every scenario considered. Back in the Martian chamber, Sarah walked up to the monolith one last time. She placed her gloved hand gently on its surface. "We're coming," she whispered. "Whoever you were, whatever you were trying to say, we hear you." The stars outside Starship seemed to shimmer a little brighter. The journey was no longer about reaching Mars. It was about discovering where the road beyond Mars would lead. Inside the dim chamber on Mars, the glowing map above the monolith rotated slowly in the still Martian air, like a cosmic compass guiding the crew towards something no human had ever imagined. The star paths continued to shift and realign, pinpointing several destinations far beyond the solar system, some systems known, some entirely unfamiliar. The highlighted route that blinked 3 times, confirming Starship's current location, had now extended further, as if asking a silent question. "Will you follow?" Sarah, Daniel, and Mark returned to the Starship and began reviewing the decoded patterns with Earth-based command. The celestial navigation system had already integrated the alien coordinates and proposed theoretical jump points, locations where gravitational fields could allow slingshot maneuvers, perhaps even shortcuts through folded space. The possibility of wormhole usage, long a fringe theory, suddenly didn't seem so far-fetched. In SpaceX's mission control back on Earth, Elon Musk stood at the center of a quiet storm of activity. "Are we looking at interstellar travel?" someone asked, breaking the silence. Elon didn't look away from the live holographic projection beamed from Starship's AI feed. "We're looking at an invitation to become something more than we've ever been." Everyone in the room felt it, something primal, something impossible to ignore. For millennia, humans had looked up and wondered if someone was out there. Now, something out there had left a light on. Back aboard Starship, the mood had shifted. The mission's original objective had been to study Mars and prepare for colonization. Now, that goal seemed tiny in comparison. But shifting the mission from Mars to interstellar exploration wasn't something the crew could just decide. It required global approval, technical analysis, and immense planning. But Elon, as always, was already several steps ahead. "I want a new starship built," he told his engineering leads via secure comms. "Fitted for long-term deep space travel. We'll call it Odyssey 1. The current crew will finish their data gathering on Mars and return with everything they've learned. But once they're back, we send another mission." Rachel, SpaceX's systems engineer, raised a concern. "Even if we use fusion-based propulsion or next-gen ion drives, we're still looking at decades of travel to reach those stars. Unless the artifact isn't just a map," Elon interrupted. "Unless it's a gate." The room fell silent. It was a theory gaining traction, especially among the AI teams parsing the signal's underlying code. They had found evidence of energy modulation sequences, frequencies that mirrored early Earth-based wormhole simulations. If correct, the monolith might be more than a beacon. It might be a kind of key, or portal. On Mars, the crew was running similar experiments. The artifact reacted to light, pressure, and most recently, magnetic resonance. During one test, Mark discovered that specific audio frequencies emitted by Starship's communication system caused the monolith to vibrate, almost like it was trying to respond. "It's communicating," he said, recording the data. "Not in language, not in words, but through resonance. Maybe we've been thinking too small. It's not asking us to come. It's asking us to understand." They began broadcasting various encoded signals toward the monolith: mathematical constants, prime number sequences, gravitational wave models. After nearly 4 hours of static, the monolith responded. The light changed color. And then, the chamber shifted. The ground rumbled lightly, not violently, like an ancient machine waking up. Dust fell from the chamber's ceiling as new lines appeared along the wall, lines that hadn't been visible before. The celestial navigation system picked up a sudden distortion in the local gravitational field. "Guys," Sarah said, staring at her handheld scanner. "This entire structure is moving." More symbols lit up, forming a complete star path, a corridor through space and time. At the end of that corridor was a single glyph, a spiral within a triangle, repeated 3 times. The crew didn't know what it meant, but the celestial system did. It matched a location, deep in a region of the galaxy so far from Earth that no probe had ever reached it. And still, the question remained, was it safe? Back on Earth, international coalitions were already forming. NASA, ESA, JAXA, and private space companies were eager to join forces, building infrastructure to decode the alien data and prepare for what might come next. Elon's private teams worked round the clock to model the potential physics behind what the Martian structure might be. But not everyone was excited. Some warned that this could be a trap. That poking too far into alien technology might invite consequences humanity wasn't ready for. Elon, speaking in a rare live address to the public, responded directly. "We didn't come this far to turn back now. When fire was discovered, it could have destroyed us. When electricity was discovered, it could have killed us. But we kept pushing. This is no different. If someone, or something, left this message for us, it means they wanted it found. It means someone believed we'd make it this far. This is the moment we've been dreaming of for centuries. Not just to go to Mars, but to go beyond." Public support surged. Hashtags like #AnswerTheStars and #ProjectOdyssey trended globally. Children in classrooms pointed to the Martian sky and asked if they'd live to see another world. For the first time in history, hope was universal. Back on Mars, the crew knew their time was running out. Supplies were limited, and Earth needed them to return with data, samples, and first-hand accounts. But none of them wanted to leave, not without answers. Sarah stood before the monolith one last time. She removed a small metal badge from her suit, an insignia from the first Mars mission, and placed it on the base of the artifact. "If this is really an invitation," she whispered, "then this is our RSVP. As they prepared to launch Starship for the return journey, the monolith pulsed once more, calm, steady. Like it understood. And watched. Starship lifted off the Martian surface with a roar. As it climbed into the Martian sky, the crew looked down one last time at the structure, now half-lit, its star map slowly dimming as if to say, "See you soon." They were headed home. But home would never feel the same again. The journey back to Earth wasn't just a return, it was a transformation. For the crew of the Starship, Mars had changed everything. What began as a historic step in human space exploration had become something far deeper, a message, a mystery, and perhaps, a destiny. As the red planet faded into the distance behind them, the weight of what they had discovered pressed on them like Mars' gravity had never quite let go. Inside the cockpit, Sarah stared at the navigation screen. The celestial system was fully integrated with the alien coordinates now, mapping not just their return trajectory but offering glimpses of the possible future paths they could take, stars, systems, entire galactic regions labeled in a language humanity had only just begun to decipher. "You ever think," Mark said, breaking the silence, "that maybe we were never supposed to stay on Earth? That maybe the real story was always out there?" Sarah smiled faintly. "I think the real story just started." The return trip was smoother than the outbound voyage. With the navigation system now upgraded by alien algorithms, Starship made mid-course corrections with uncanny precision. Even Elon was impressed. The AI had evolved. The navigation didn't just follow the stars, it understood them. Down in the lower deck, Daniel was cataloging samples collected from the Martian artifact and the surrounding soil. He paused, looking at a small carved shard he had recovered from the monolith chamber. "People back home aren't ready for this," he muttered, placing it gently in a containment unit. "But they're going to have to be." Earth grew steadily in their viewport. A brilliant blue dot framed in the cold vastness of space. As they neared the moon's orbit, Starship signaled re-entry trajectory. The crew strapped in. Silence settled over the cabin as they prepared for the final leg. "Starship, you are go for atmospheric entry," came the voice of ground control. It had been weeks since they'd heard a voice that wasn't one of their own. It felt grounding. They pierced the atmosphere at over 17,000 miles per hour. Flames licked the outer hull as the sky turned from black to brilliant orange, then blue. Starship roared above the Pacific Ocean before pivoting into a controlled descent toward its landing zone, Cape Canaveral. When the landing legs extended and the ship touched down with a solid thunk, cheers erupted not just in mission control but around the world. They had done it. They had left Earth, landed on Mars, uncovered proof of alien intelligence, and returned. The hatch opened, and Sarah was the first to step out. The moment her foot hit Earth's soil again, reporters and cameras captured the image that would be seen by billions. She didn't wave. She didn't smile. She just looked up at the sky. Because she knew the real journey was still ahead. Within hours, the crew was debriefed and taken to a secure facility in Texas. A team of international scientists was already waiting, prepared to analyze every sample, image, and scan. But more than anything, they wanted to hear about the structure. The signal. The invitation. Sarah, Daniel, and Mark spent 3 days answering questions, going through endless simulations, and confirming that what they'd seen was real. There was no longer room for speculation. This was contact. Meanwhile, Elon was already a dozen steps ahead. At Starbase, construction on Odyssey 1 had begun, larger, sleeker, and reinforced for deep space. Its fusion core would allow for extended missions beyond the solar system, and its interior would be modular, designed to adapt to unknown environments. And in its heart would be the upgraded celestial navigation system, now co-developed with what they'd learned from the Martian artifact. In a televised announcement, Elon stood before the press, wearing a black SpaceX jacket and an expression of quiet intensity. "Our mission to Mars was never about just reaching another planet. It was about expanding our understanding of what's possible. What we found was not just a relic. It was a roadmap. A message across time and space. And we intend to answer it. The world reacted with awe, speculation, and no shortage of fear. Religious leaders weighed in. Conspiracy theories bloomed. But none of it stopped the momentum. Within weeks, the decoded signal had been published for the public. Universities created entire departments dedicated to alien linguistics. Artists created renderings of the ancient civilization that might have once stood on Mars. Children painted spirals and triangles on sidewalks with chalk. Something had awakened in humanity, a hunger to look up again, to dream. Despite the media frenzy, Sarah tried to keep a low profile. She'd returned to her small home in Arizona for a few days of peace before training began for the next phase. One evening, sitting under the stars with a cup of coffee, she opened her tablet and reviewed the latest celestial navigation update. There was a new path listed. It wasn't part of the original transmission. It was labeled Route, Homeward. She tapped into it. The system displayed a route even further than the others, a series of star systems mapped like breadcrumbs through the void. No clear destination. Just a long, winding corridor. But at the end of the path was something strange, a cluster of stars arranged in the exact shape of Earth's ancient Sumerian glyph for origin. Sarah blinked. No way. The implications were staggering. Had humanity originated elsewhere? Or had someone like them come here once, left behind seeds, stories, maybe even DNA? She forwarded the data to Elon. Later that night, Elon sat alone in his office, staring at the new star path. What if we're not just meant to explore the stars, he whispered. What if we're supposed to go back? The journey to Mars had changed humanity. But what came next would redefine it. In a climate-controlled vault beneath SpaceX's R&D facility, the fragment from the Martian monolith sat on a glass pedestal, surrounded by the most advanced analytical instruments Earth could offer. Scientists from around the globe had flown in to examine it, physicists, linguists, anthropologists, and engineers, each hoping to catch a glimpse of the unknown encoded in its carved lines. The fragment was dense, not just physically, but informationally. It wasn't made of any one material, but rather a composite of elements found both on Earth and Mars, and a few that hadn't been catalogued at all. Even more bizarre, the surface bore microscopic etchings so precise they suggested engineering capabilities thousands of years ahead of any current technology. But it was the symbol at the center of the fragment that caught everyone's attention, a triple spiral inside a triangle, nearly identical to symbols found in some of Earth's oldest ruins, from the stone circles of Ireland to pre-Incan temples in Peru. The implications were staggering. Meanwhile, Sarah, Daniel, and Mark were undergoing psychological and physiological evaluations in preparation for Odyssey 1. But during one late-night debriefing, Sarah brought up something she'd been holding back. Before we left the chamber on Mars, she said, voice low, I had a moment, a strange one. It felt like déjà vu. But stronger. Like I'd been there before. Mark gave her a curious look. You mean like a dream? No. More like, recognition. I looked at that spiral symbol, and I didn't think, what is that? I thought, why is that here? Like part of me already knew what it meant. Daniel leaned forward. I felt it too. Not the same, but something similar. A kind of resonance. Like the monolith wasn't just showing us the stars, it was remembering something. The room went quiet. This wasn't the kind of thing you put in official mission logs. But it wasn't something they could ignore either. Across the planet, others were feeling it too. As the images and sounds from the Martian monolith were broadcast globally, reports began to surface, people claiming dreams of places they'd never been, memories they couldn't explain, visions of spiral-shaped vessels flying through alien skies. At first, it was chalked up to collective hysteria or imagination stirred by the discovery. But then the dreams started to align. Different people in different parts of the world described the same landscapes. The same sky formations. The same songs. The most chilling was from a child in India, just 6 years old, who drew a star map matching one of the unknown coordinates from the Martian transmission. When asked how she knew, she simply replied, "I heard it in the light." The celestial navigation system, now fully integrated with the Martian algorithms, began revealing patterns previously invisible. Not just maps, but echoes. Traces of energy left behind by something massive. Something that had traveled these routes before. Using enhanced gravitational field mapping, the system reconstructed the trajectory of an unknown vessel that had moved from the outer edge of the Andromeda galaxy, passed through several interstellar waypoints, and terminated in the region of the solar system. But the end point wasn't Mars. It was Earth. Elon stared at the reconstructed path for nearly an hour before he finally said it aloud. "We didn't just find a message. We found a trail. And it leads home." Immediately, the theory that had been whispered among fringe scientists for decades roared back into center stage. What if humanity didn't evolve solely on Earth? What if we were placed here, intentionally? Sarah, reviewing the latest DNA sequencing comparisons between Martian microbial remnants and Earth-based extremophiles, stumbled across something almost too wild to accept. A protein structure, nearly identical in both samples. Statistically improbable. Evolutionary impossible. Unless there had been seeding. "Are you saying," Daniel asked cautiously, "that life didn't just coincidentally develop on Mars and Earth, but that it might have come from the same source?" Sarah nodded. "Or maybe even, the same ship." The press didn't get wind of the discovery immediately. But Elon, during a private live stream, dropped a line that would explode across the internet. If Earth was the cradle of humanity, then Mars might have been the waiting room. And somewhere out there, there's a living room. Theories ran wild. Alien architects. Ancient travelers. Lost civilizations that fled cosmic catastrophe and left echoes of themselves on distant worlds. And the more the celestial navigation system processed, the more evidence emerged. Recurring gravitational signatures in deep space, perfectly aligned with the spiral triangle symbol. One of those signatures had been dormant for eons. But now, it was moving. Back at the SpaceX lab, the Martian fragment began to hum. No one had touched it. No systems were active. It was responding to something. Some signal, a pulse from deep space. The same night, Elon received a direct transmission from the onboard AI of A-Xii 1, which hadn't even launched yet. The message was short. 3 words. "They are coming." Sarah stared at the words on the screen, feeling that same electric buzz in her spine she had felt inside the Martian chamber. "Coming from where?" she whispered. Daniel exhaled slowly. Maybe the real question is, why now? 3 weeks after the Martian fragment began to hum, the world changed again. It started with deep space observatories picking up faint, rhythmic pulses from the edge of the Oort cloud, regular, patterned, unmistakably artificial. Not a natural pulsar, not background noise. This was intentional. Structured. A language in light. NASA confirmed it first. The European Space Agency followed. Then came China's moon-based observatory with the most precise reading, a transmission matching the same frequency embedded in the Martian monolith. In a secure SpaceX boardroom, Elon Musk stood before a hologram of the signal. On one side, the spiral triangle symbol pulsed. On the other, Earth's coordinates, and a countdown. "If this is right," Rachel, the head of Deep Space Telemetry, said, "we have 6 days before something reaches our solar system." The room went silent. Sarah, patched in from the Houston Mission Prep facility, leaned closer to her screen. "Can we tell if it's a ship?" "Not just a ship," Daniel replied. "A formation." Images displayed on the screen, 7 distinct objects, each hundreds of kilometers wide, moving in perfect geometric formation. Not hostile. Not erratic. But deliberate. Like dancers in an ancient ballet, crossing millions of miles to arrive exactly here. Elon looked at the path again, comparing it to the Martian star map. They're coming along the exact corridor the artifact highlighted. The same path we were meant to take. But we didn't go, Sarah whispered. Not yet. No, Elon replied. So they're coming to us. The news was released with caution. The official line was, an unidentified astronomical phenomenon is approaching Earth. But the public knew. They'd felt it building for months, since the return from Mars, since the images of the monolith, since the spiral symbols started showing up in dreams, sketches, street art, and whispers across the globe. This wasn't just science fiction anymore. The countdown was real. On day 2, the formation decelerated as it entered the outer rim of the solar system. Neptune's gravity barely touched them. The objects ignored Pluto. Their path remained unchanged, direct, efficient, peaceful, and headed for Earth's orbit. On day 3, they passed Saturn. Space probes picked up electromagnetic waves, similar to the Martian signal but more refined, like a full language emerging from its alphabet. The Celestial Navigation System, now fully integrated into Earth's defense network, translated what it could. One phrase kept repeating. We remember. Sarah sat in her room at the astronaut facility, heart pounding as the phrase scrolled across the screen again and again. They remember what? She murmured. Daniel called her moments later, voice trembling with excitement. They're not just sending a message. They're tuning in. Reacting to our responses. It's a conversation. What are we saying back? She asked. Daniel hesitated. Everything we can. Prime numbers. Pi. DNA structure. A Beethoven symphony. Images of the Earth, of Mars, of the monolith, and your voice. My voice. You said, we're coming. From the Martian chamber. It's in the log. Sarah leaned back, stunned. So they know we heard them. Now they want to be heard too. By day 4, the ships had passed Jupiter. Humanity was no longer watching from the sidelines, they were holding their breath. Governments met in emergency councils. Military leaders coordinated space defense protocols while insisting on a peaceful posture. No one wanted to fire first. Everyone feared the implications if anyone did. But no aggressive moves came from the formation. No energy spikes. No weapons. Just silent, synchronized approach. People camped out in deserts, rooftops, mountaintops, anywhere with a clear view of the sky. They waited not in fear, but in awe. For many, it felt less like an invasion and more like a return. In Times Square, the largest screen simply read. They are coming. Be still. Day 5. The lead ship broke formation, slowing near the orbit of Mars. Its surface was unlike anything humans had ever seen, organic yet metallic, shimmering like liquid starlight. Telescopic feeds showed a single marking along its side, the spiral triangle symbol, now spinning slowly in sync with the original Martian signal. The ship emitted a focused beam toward Mars. The Martian artifact, still humming in its Earth-based vault, began to resonate louder, so loud that some of the containment glass shattered. Elon, observing remotely, issued an immediate directive: activate the chamber. Full signal match. Inside the facility, technicians fed the alien beam into the fragment's frequency system. And the fragment answered. Not in light. In voice. You survived the silence. The phrase repeated in multiple languages: English, Mandarin, Arabic, even ancient Sumerian. Then the message continued. We left the seeds. You grew. We return not to rule, but to remember. The Celestial Navigation System began highlighting a new path, one that branched from Earth, not Mars. A shared route. A meeting place. Sarah stood before a hologram, heart pounding. They're asking us to meet them. Elon's voice crackled through the comms, then we go. All of us. Day 6. Arrival. The 7 ships entered Earth's orbit, one by one, spreading out like petals around the planet. No weapons. No shields. Just presence. Observing. And then, from the largest ship, a message. We await the one who touched the light. Sarah looked up, stunned. They mean me. A global vote wasn't needed. Within minutes, it was decided. Sarah would board Odyssey 1 ahead of schedule. She wouldn't go alone, Daniel and Mark would join her. Their task wasn't exploration anymore. It was first contact. At Cape Canaveral, the sun rose over Odyssey 1 as final launch preparations completed. Elon stood on the launch pad with Sarah, watching the clouds drift across the sky. You were never just an astronaut, he told her. You were the message. Sarah took a deep breath. Let's hope they like what they read. As Odyssey 1 lifted into the sky, the 7 alien ships shifted position, aligning with its ascent. And from the lead ship, a final transmission blinked across every screen on Earth. Welcome home. The sky above Earth's upper atmosphere shimmered as Odyssey 1 broke free of gravity's grip, heading straight toward the formation of alien vessels now calmly orbiting the planet. No one fired a shot. No threats were issued. It was as if both sides, human and alien, were taking slow, deliberate breaths before the most significant moment in history. Inside the cockpit, Sarah watched the display with a strange calm. The alien vessels were beautiful. Their surfaces moved subtly, like liquid metal shaped by thought. No visible engines. No markings other than the glowing spiral triangle symbol, pulsing in rhythm with Odyssey 1's navigational system. I'm not going to lie, Daniel said, looking out at the approaching ships. I thought they'd be more mechanical. More War of the Worlds. This is almost artistic. Maybe art is universal, Mark muttered. Or maybe they knew what we'd expect and chose to show something else. Sarah's hands hovered over the controls, but she wasn't flying. The ship was. Odyssey 1 had shifted into auto-navigation the moment it synced with the alien signal. The celestial guidance system lit up, pulling them gently toward the lead vessel. No propulsion burns. No correction thrusters. Just, trust. And a whisper in the back of Sarah's mind. You are seen. Earth watched breathlessly. Every major network live-streamed the event. Commentators ran out of superlatives. Across the globe, billions of eyes were glued to screens, watching humanity reach for something it had only imagined in fiction. At Mission Control, Elon Musk stood with arms crossed, his jaw tight. Despite the optimism, he knew the stakes. This was a one-way journey, at least for now. There was no guarantee they'd return, no assurance these beings were peaceful. But the choice had already been made. Sometimes, he had told his executive team hours earlier, the leap is the only way forward. As Odyssey 1 approached the lead alien vessel, the ship extended a part of itself, literally. A shimmering bridge unfolded from the alien craft, reaching across the vacuum of space, forming a kind of docking tendril. Not metal. Not solid in the traditional sense. It moved like silk underwater, but maintained perfect structure. The ship gently nestled into place without a sound. Then came the moment. Docking complete, the onboard AI announced softly. Pressurized interface established. Life support confirmed. No alarms. No threats. Just an open door. Sarah stood at the threshold, helmet tucked under her arm, heart pounding. The airlock before her wasn't traditional. It pulsed faintly, almost like a heartbeat. The ship wasn't just a vessel, it was alive in some way. A final scan confirmed the environment was breathable, gravity acceptable, and radiation negligible. Everything about the docking procedure had been perfect. Designed for humans. Or, at least, something very much like humans. Sarah turned to Daniel and Mark. You ready? Daniel grinned nervously. Ready to rewrite every textbook on Earth. Mark nodded. Let's find out who's been waiting for us. As they stepped across the threshold, the sensation was immediate. Warmth. Light. A soft hum that resonated through their bones, like the harmony of a tuning fork aligned to their very DNA. The interior of the ship was luminous, not from fixtures or panels, but from the walls themselves. They shifted color as the team walked, responding to their presence. The corridor wasn't straight, but gently curved, leading them deeper into the heart of the vessel. Suddenly, the floor beneath their feet pulsed, once, softly. Acknowledged, the AI whispered. You are being received. At the end of the corridor, the space widened into a chamber unlike anything they'd ever seen. A vaulted dome, glowing with a soft blue hue, stood before them. In the center, a tall figure waited. Not an alien. Not in the way science fiction had prepared them for. No gray skin. No tentacles. No elongated heads. The figure was humanoid. Not identical to humans, but close enough to be uncanny, slightly taller, slenderer, with luminous skin that shimmered like starlight. Eyes deep and knowing, as if they carried memories not just of lifetimes, but of civilizations. The figure spoke. Not in English. Not in sound. In thought. You have journeyed from the cradle. You have remembered the sky. You have survived the silence. Sarah gasped softly, not in fear, but recognition. The voice. It was the same voice she'd heard in her dream inside the Martian chamber. The one that had whispered, "We remember." "Who are you?" she asked aloud. The figure tilted its head, the motion graceful, reverent. "We are the Echo. The children of the first flame. We are what you were, and what you may become." Daniel stepped forward, awestruck. "You're saying we're connected?" The figure turned its eyes to him, eyes that shimmered like galaxies. "Long ago, your kind left our world. Scattered among the stars. To begin anew. To test if the flame would endure." Sarah's heart raced. "So we came from you? You came from all of us. A chorus of origins. You are the descendants of those who chose to carry light into the dark." Mark's voice cracked. "Then why now? Why return?" The figure stepped forward, slowly, reverently. "Because you answered. And because, it is time." Back on Earth, Mission Control was receiving partial telemetry from A-Xii 1. Audio was fuzzy. Visuals distorted. But one thing came through loud and clear, a single phrase, spoken by Sarah as she stared into the face of what might be humanity's progenitor. "We were never alone. We were just, waiting to remember." And in that moment, the spiral triangle symbol lit up not just on the alien vessel, but in ancient ruins across the earth. In temples. In tombs. In places humanity had forgotten. They were never decorations. They were invitations. The chamber inside the alien vessel pulsed gently with a warmth that wasn't just physical, it was familiar. As Sarah stood in the glow, something inside her stirred. Not fear. Not confusion. Recognition. The Echo, the being who greeted them, raised a hand. Not in warning, but in invitation. With a single gesture, the walls of the chamber shifted, rearranging like liquid crystal until a holographic field surrounded them. Not screens. Not projections. Memories. They watched as entire galaxies spun into being, then dimmed to make way for images of vast, golden cities floating in space, orbiting suns that no longer existed. Sarah's breath caught as she saw beings, like the Echo, like them, walking along platforms of light, speaking with thoughts, shaping matter with will. "This is where it began," the Echo's voice echoed gently. "The first flame. A gift of consciousness, carried by those who chose not to dominate, but to endure. Daniel stepped closer, awestruck. Is this, your history? It is our history. Yours, mine, and those who came before. Sarah's eyes were fixed on the images. One scene showed a shimmering vessel, sleek, glowing, unmistakably organic, drifting through space. It passed Earth. Then Mars. Then deeper into the solar system. We seeded many worlds, the echo continued. Not to rule them, but to test whether the flame could survive time, and silence. Some did not, he added, voice heavier now. Mars was one of them. They all turned as the vision showed a thriving civilization on ancient Mars, towers of glass and crystal, skies blue and vibrant, oceans that danced under twin moons. And then, disaster. A solar wave. A magnetic inversion. Something catastrophic. The flame dimmed there. But its embers, scattered. Sarah whispered, Earth. The echo nodded. Earth. Images of Earth's prehistory followed. Not just the rise of humans, but subtle interventions, nudges. Ancient civilizations touched by whispers. The spiral triangle left behind as a breadcrumb, a memory encoded in stone, myth, and instinct. You were never watched, the echo said. You were remembered. And when you remembered us, the flame reignited. Mark blinked, stunned. So, we've had this in us all along. Yes. But remembering takes time. And courage. Another scene emerged. The spiral triangle symbol glowing in the Martian monolith. A beam of light extending from it toward deep space. The same beam Earth had echoed back when Sarah touched the chamber. When she touched it, Daniel murmured, she didn't just activate it. She answered. The echo turned to Sarah again. You are not chosen. You are remembered. Your essence, your spark, it resonates. We felt it. Across time. Sarah took a deep breath, overwhelmed, but grounded. What happens now? The echo walked toward the center of the chamber and placed its hand on a raised pedestal. Instantly, the holographic memory dissolved, replaced by a map. The celestial navigation system lit up again, synced with the alien interface. One single pathway illuminated. A route beyond the Milky Way. Now, the echo said softly, we return to the source. Daniel frowned. The source of what? Of the first flame. Of everything. Mark stepped forward. You're saying we're going to, where life began. Where it began, and where it must begin again. Sarah looked at the path. It would take decades, even with advanced tech. Generations. But something in her chest told her the journey wasn't just possible, it was necessary. The echo raised one final question. Will you carry the flame further? Sarah looked to her team. To Daniel. To Mark. To the echoing pulse of humanity in her ears. And she said, without hesitation. Yes. Back on Earth, Elon received the full transmission, translated, decrypted, and streamed through the celestial system. He stood on the balcony of SpaceX headquarters, watching the stars above Cape Canaveral with a strange smile. They had made contact. But more than that, they had been invited. He turned to his top engineers. We need to start building. Something bigger. Something that can follow them. One of them hesitated. Sir, where exactly are we going? Elon looked back at the sky. Home. Over the next 72 hours, Earth changed. The 7 alien ships shared fragments of their knowledge, not blueprints, but foundations. Understanding of energy, gravity, healing, time. Not everything. Just enough. Enough to prepare. And then, as silently as they had arrived, 6 of the ships departed, following a new trajectory, toward the edge of the galaxy. They left only one behind, the ship Sarah now stood aboard. It would become Earth's ambassador. A living bridge between species. And soon, it would carry her further than any human had ever gone. But before that, the Echo showed them one last thing. A vault. Buried deep within the alien ship was a seed chamber. Inside, biodata from hundreds of species. DNA from planets long gone. And among them, a strand of Earth human DNA. Not from now. From before. Carbon dated to 1.2 million years ago. Sarah stared at it, chills running down her spine. "We were there," she whispered. "We've always been part of this." The Echo responded, almost reverently. "The flame does not forget. It waits." And so, as Earth slept, and the stars wheeled above, Odyssey 1 prepared for its next leap. Into the past. Toward the source. Toward the first flame. The stars ahead looked the same, but everything behind had changed. Sarah stood on the bridge of Odyssey 1, watching Earth shrink to a bright dot on the dark canvas of space. The alien vessel, now fully merged with their ship, glided effortlessly on a course humanity couldn't have charted a year ago. The fusion of human and Echo technology had created something new, something alive. And it was ready to jump. Navigation synchronized, the AI reported calmly. Jump corridor stable. Estimated arrival, 87 light-years from current position. Daniel leaned over the console. "That's impossible." "At least, it used to be." "No longer," replied the Echo, standing at the helm with them. "The corridor is not distance. It is memory. And we have remembered the way." Sarah inhaled deeply, nerves tingling. "Let's light the flame." The ship responded not with a roar, but a ripple. Space itself bent and shimmered around them. Stars stretched into golden lines, the blackness folding inward like a page turning in a cosmic book. In a flash of silence, they were gone. What followed was not sleep, but dreaming. Not induced, not artificial, but ancient. Sarah floated in a sea of stars, her body intact but untethered from time. She saw flashes, planets forming, civilizations rising, flames being lit, then snuffed out. She wasn't just observing. She was reliving. One moment she stood on a world with twin suns, its skies filled with winged creatures and glowing cities. The next, she felt herself walking barefoot on Mars, before it was red and barren, green valleys alive with song and wind. "This is not illusion," the Echo's voice whispered. "This is remembrance." Mark dreamed of a city beneath a violet sea. Of a hand reaching out to his as comets blazed across the sky. Daniel walked inside a spiral temple, symbols etched in gold. He touched one, and it spoke his name in 100 languages. When they finally awoke, the stars had changed. And so had they. Outside the ship, a world drifted into view. It wasn't on any map. No probe had ever seen it. But it was alive. Lush. Radiant. Floating alone in an orbit around a pale blue star. "This is Etherian," the Echo said. "The last world of the first flame." The planet shimmered with impossible hues, forests of crystal trees, oceans that reflected starlight in shifting tones. No cities. No ruins. And yet, something pulsed beneath the surface. A hum that made Sarah's bones ache with familiarity. "There were once many like it," the Echo continued. "Now, only this remains." Sarah turned slowly. "Is this where we came from?" "In part," the Echo replied. "This is where the carriers gathered before the scattering. Before the silence. They descended to the surface, not in a shuttle, but through the ship itself, which unfolded like petals and lowered them into the atmosphere, surrounding them with breathable air and warmth. Gravity adjusted gently. It was as if the world wanted them there. They landed in a meadow that glowed underfoot, light blooming with each step. Ahead stood a circle of standing stones, not ancient and broken, but alive, humming with energy. Each stone bore the spiral triangle symbol. And in the center, a pedestal. The echo gestured for Sarah to approach. Your spark is aligned. Place your hand. As she stepped forward, the world seemed to lean in. Wind quieted. Trees stilled. Light dimmed around the edges of the field. She touched the pedestal. And the world remembered. A burst of energy spiraled out across the planet. From mountain to ocean, valley to sky, everything pulsed once, twice, and then settled into harmony. The pedestal came to life, projecting an image of an ancient gathering. Not just echo. Not just humans. Dozens of species. Tall beings of light. Quadrupeds with crystalline limbs. Amphibious creatures swimming through the air. All encircling a flame. The first flame. It was not fire as humans knew it. It was thought. Memory. Unity. A spark of the universe's deepest desire, to know itself. This, the echo said, is what you have always carried. Not in ships. Not in cities. In yourselves. Daniel's voice cracked. Then, what are we meant to do with it? The echo stepped forward, eyes glowing. Pass it on. Back aboard Odyssey 1, a new path emerged in the navigation system, hundreds of coordinates, some familiar, others hidden. The map unfolded not outward, but inward. Toward Earth. Toward Mars. Toward humanity's own forgotten vaults. We are not the destination, the echo explained. We are the beginning. Sarah stared at the map. We bring this home. You bring the memory. You light new flames. Mark looked up from the console. And what about you? What happens to the echo? The echo turned, stepping back toward the center of the chamber, where a smaller version of the flame had ignited. We will fade. As all echoes must. But you will endure. And with that, the echo bowed, an ancient, graceful gesture, and became light. As Odyssey 1 turned back toward Earth, the journey no longer felt like an end. It was the spark of something new. A return not to what was lost, but to what had been waiting, inside all of them. As the stars stretched again, Sarah whispered into the ship's log. We have seen the source. And now, we become it. The stars unwound in slow spirals as Odyssey 1 emerged from its long leap, gliding back into the familiar embrace of Earth's solar system. The ship, now part human, part echo, shimmered with the same silent confidence that had guided them through the unknown. It no longer looked like the vessel that had left Earth. Neither did its crew. Sarah stood at the viewport, Earth slowly growing larger before her eyes. It looked unchanged, blue, cloud-draped, alive. And yet, it felt entirely different now. Home, she whispered, then corrected herself, or, maybe just the beginning again. Daniel joined her, carrying a data pad. The readings are clean. No damage. Full return path stable. It's like the ship never even strained. It didn't, Mark said from behind. Because it wanted to come back. Sarah turned to him, one brow raised. The ship? Mark nodded slowly. It's more than tech now. It's, like a memory turned into motion. They all knew he was right. The journey hadn't just changed them. It had changed the ship itself. And the memory it carried was ready to be shared. Earth's orbital defense systems went into alert mode the moment Odyssey 1 re-entered local space. 7 ships had once orbited Earth, 6 had departed. Only this one remained, and it no longer looked purely human. It glowed like a star, pulsing with strange energy and trailing a wake of harmonic resonance that bent gravity slightly around it. But Earth didn't panic. Not anymore. The world had spent the last 2 weeks preparing. Since the alien ships had first arrived and departed, nations had united in a way unseen in centuries. The new space accord had been signed by 196 countries. Fear gave way to fascination. Weapon budgets were reallocated to exploration. Telescopes no longer watched for war, but for signals. When A-Xii 1 requested re-entry, the response was immediate. Welcome home. The landing site was no longer Cape Canaveral. It was Site Theta, a newly constructed facility in the Nevada desert, designed to receive and contain technologies of extraterrestrial origin. But there was no need for containment now. There was only one mission: learn. Share. Connect. Sarah, Daniel, and Mark stepped onto Earth's soil again to a quiet, stunned welcome. Elon Musk was there, his eyes not filled with triumph, but with awe. He walked up to Sarah and simply said, "You did it." She smiled. "We all did." Daniel held out the crystalline drive, the core memory from the flame, encoded and stabilized. "This holds the map. Not just the stars. The DNA, the harmonics, the source, all of it." Mark added, "It's a blueprint. For something bigger than technology. For understanding." Elon nodded. "Let's get it to the world." Over the next days, Site Theta became a center of global cooperation. The crystalline memory core was studied, copied, shared. It didn't offer weapons. It offered connection. Within days, doctors began understanding new principles of cellular regeneration based on harmonics. Architects studied materials that mimicked the living hull of A-Xii 1. Mathematicians wept as they decoded formulae that predicted quantum resonance with near-spiritual precision. But more than the data, it was the message that struck deepest. You were never alone. You were always meant to remember. Schools around the world adopted a new symbol into their crests, the spiral triangle, glowing faintly, like a flame. Religious leaders met with scientists, not to argue, but to interpret. For the first time, the line between mysticism and physics blurred into something that looked a lot like truth. Sarah testified before the newly formed United Planetary Assembly. The chamber was packed: delegates, scientists, civilians. She stood at the center beneath the symbol of Earth wrapped in stars and shared what she had seen. They didn't come to rule. They came to remind us who we are. The first flame lives in us. It always did. She held up a small fragment of the pedestal from Etherian. It pulsed with the same golden hue they had seen in the chamber. This is not a relic. This is a key. And it's only the beginning. The room gave her a standing ovation. But more importantly, they believed. Outside the hall, Sarah sat alone, watching the stars begin to emerge. Daniel found her sitting on the stone steps, legs stretched out, gaze far away. "You okay?" She nodded. "Just thinking." "About what?" She gestured at the sky. "We've barely scratched the surface. We've been walking around with stardust in our bones and never realized it." Mark appeared beside them, holding a digital tablet. "Well, we're not in the dark anymore. The flame's lit. It's our job to carry it forward." Sarah smiled, more tired than triumphant. "And who do we give it to first?" Daniel grinned. "The kids. Always the kids." 3 weeks later, the first Flame Initiative school opened in Colorado. A place where children were taught not just facts, but wonder. Where physics was paired with empathy. Where imagination was the first subject of the day, and memory, deep, ancestral, cosmic, was honored like history. Sarah visited on the first day. She watched a young boy sketch the spiral triangle symbol in glowing ink. His fingers moved like he'd done it before. She asked him where he learned it. He shrugged. "I don't know. I just remember." Her throat tightened. The flame had already begun to spread. And in orbit, A-Xii 1 waited. Not retired. Ready. Because there would be others. Other flames, other echoes. Worlds still forgotten. Psalms left unsung. And someone would have to go find them. The ship gently rotated, its surface shimmering with the memory of stars. And in its core, the voice of the echo echoed once more. The cradle was not your end. It was only where you woke up. It had been a year since Odyssey 1 returned to Earth, and the world had changed in ways no one could have predicted. The flame, the shared memory of the universe, had not only sparked scientific breakthroughs, but had reignited something deeper within humanity. People had begun to ask questions that transcended borders, ideologies, and fears. It wasn't just about technology anymore. It was about who they were. And the children had become the torchbearers. The Flame Initiative, established in schools worldwide, flourished. Classrooms were no longer confined to textbooks. Students studied not just the laws of physics, but the philosophy of existence. They connected quantum mechanics to spirituality, mathematics to art. The world was waking up to the fact that humanity had always been part of something much larger, something ancient. And it was their responsibility to carry the flame forward. Sarah had spent most of the last few months in the vast archives of Site Theta, poring over the data they had recovered from the first flame. The work was endless, and yet, each discovery felt like a step closer to understanding who the Echo truly were. The maps they had shared were only the beginning. The DNA samples encoded in the crystalline memory revealed patterns that weren't just universal, but personal. Humanity had always thought of itself as unique. But now, they saw that they were one note in a cosmic symphony. One evening, as Sarah sat in the quiet archives, Daniel came to her with a stack of files. "You need to see this." Sarah looked up from the tablet, her eyes tired but curious. "What is it?" Daniel set the files down and leaned over the table. "It's the genetic sequences we recovered from Etherian. We've been tracing them. And there's something extraordinary." Sarah frowned. "Extraordinary how?" Daniel tapped a series of sequences on the tablet, highlighting one specific strand. It glowed faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat. "These sequences, when we cross-reference them with Earth's genome, there's an overlap. A very precise overlap. It's like the code that made humanity." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. "Are you saying we were engineered?" Daniel shook his head. "Not engineered. Remembered. These sequences are from before. They're not alien, they're us. From the very first flame." Sarah's mind raced. So the Echo didn't just watch us. They guided us. They seeded the flame in our ancestors. "Exactly," Daniel replied, eyes wide. "And that means we are more connected to them than we ever realized." The discovery rippled through the world. Scientists, geneticists, philosophers, and theologians alike marveled at the implications. Sarah's research had uncovered that humanity was not just a product of random evolution, but of purpose, a purpose that had been waiting for them to remember. It was no longer just a question of who had visited Earth and why. It was a question of what humanity was meant to become. Elon Musk stood in front of a group of executives and engineers in the newly expanded SpaceX facility. He was no longer just the CEO of a company building rockets. He was the architect of a new phase in human history. The flame was not just a metaphor, it was a literal, scientific, and spiritual understanding of what was possible. Elon's voice carried weight. "We've learned what's out there. We've learned what's inside us. And now, it's time to return the flame. Not just to the stars, but to the worlds that have been waiting for us." The room fell silent, all eyes on him. "We are the inheritors of that legacy. And the time has come for us to find those other flames. To see what else is waiting out there. Because Earth isn't the cradle anymore. It's the launch pad." One of the engineers, a young woman named Sarah, spoke up. "Sir, you're saying we're going to send people beyond the known? Beyond the solar system?" Elon nodded, a faint smile on his lips. "Yes. We're not just sending technology. We're sending ourselves. The first flame expedition was announced 2 months later. The mission would be humanity's most daring yet. A fleet of ships, each equipped with technology derived from the Echo's teachings, would be sent beyond the Milky Way, following the path mapped out in the first flame's coordinates. But this time, the crew would not be alone. Humanity's youngest generation, the torchbearers of the flame, would be part of the journey. Sarah and Daniel stood together, watching the preparations unfold at Site Theta. Hundreds of young people, trained in the Flame Initiative, were selected for the mission. They were not the typical astronauts, these were children who had grown up understanding the universe in ways that no generation had before them. They had been taught not just to explore, but to connect. "You ready?" Daniel asked, his voice low. Sarah smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Ready for what?" "The next phase," Daniel said quietly, his hand brushing hers. "The next chapter in this story. The flame is in their hands now. We've done our part." She nodded, her thoughts racing. "It's not just about the journey. It's about the message we'll bring back. We won't just be looking for other civilizations. We'll be bringing a flame that's been waiting for them." Suddenly, a voice came over the loudspeaker. "Launch preparation complete. All systems ready. The flame expedition is ready to depart." Sarah's breath caught. She turned to Daniel, her eyes gleaming with both pride and a tinge of sorrow. "We've lit the spark. And now we watch it burn." They stood in silence, looking at the launch pad in the distance. The ships, sleek, powered by ecotech, stood ready, their hulls gleaming like stars themselves. Inside, the crew was preparing. Children, teens, young adults, all part of the first wave of explorers who would carry the flame into the universe. Sarah's thoughts drifted back to the Echo's final words: "The flame does not end. It moves, it burns, it awakens." And now, it would awaken on distant worlds. As the countdown began, Sarah's heart quickened. This was it. Earth was no longer the cradle. It was the launch pad, and humanity had finally remembered its place in the stars. The ships lifted off one by one, rising into the night sky, carrying the inheritors of the flame. And as they disappeared into the vast unknown, Sarah felt a quiet, hopeful peace. The flame would endure. And they would carry it forward, forever. The vast expanse of space stretched out before the ships of the flame expedition like an endless canvas, one waiting to be painted with the stories of those who dared to journey into the unknown. For months, Sarah and Daniel, along with the young explorers, had been part of the carefully designed mission to seek out distant worlds, worlds that had been waiting for the spark of humanity to reach them. The ships had left Earth's orbit long ago, entering the quiet darkness of deep space, a place where few humans had ventured. The crew of A-Xii I had known something that no one else could understand, not just because of the Echo's teachings, but because they had been changed by them. They were the first generation to truly understand that humanity's purpose was not just survival or exploration. It was about connection. And now, that flame, the message of the Echo, the memory of all the stars, had to be carried forward, to places no human had ever imagined. Sarah was in the central command room, her eyes scanning the digital map as the ships of the expedition continued their trajectory. The fleet was nearing a distant star system that had been identified in the ancient maps recovered from Etherian. According to the data, it was a system that held potential for life, though the stars within it were relatively young. There was no guarantee of success, but the mission's purpose was clear: to spread the flame. Daniel was beside her, studying the same readings. He glanced at her. "You think we'll find them? Find others who understand the message?" She hesitated, a soft smile playing on her lips. "I don't know. But I think it's more about understanding ourselves. Maybe that's how we'll find them. Maybe it's always been about the connection, us remembering who we are." The sound of footsteps behind them broke their concentration. Mark, who had become a guiding mentor for the younger generation, entered the command room. His eyes were filled with purpose. We're preparing for the final phase, Mark said. The children are ready. They've been trained for this moment. Sarah turned to him, her expression more solemn than usual. It feels like we're giving them too much responsibility. What if they fail? Mark shook his head. They won't fail. We've given them something the rest of humanity didn't have. We gave them hope. And that's what makes them different. They believe they're connected to something bigger than themselves. And that belief, it's powerful. She looked at him, the weight of his words sinking in. I hope you're right. As the ships moved deeper into uncharted space, Sarah and Daniel had to reckon with something they hadn't considered. The journey was not only about the physical distance traveled, but about the inner transformation the children were going through. As the days passed, the younger generation began experiencing dreams of unknown stars, of ancient voices, of galaxies spinning in perfect harmony. It was as if the flame was calling them. It wasn't just a metaphor anymore. On the command ship Elysium, a young girl named Lily, only 14 years old, sat quietly in the observation deck, her eyes tracing the path of stars outside. She had been selected for her remarkable intellect and the sensitivity she had shown during her training. She was, in many ways, the heart of the mission. She had already begun to speak of things no one else could explain, visions of other worlds, other lives, as if she was tapping into a cosmic memory. What are you thinking about? Her friend Ethan, another member of the mission, asked, taking a seat beside her. Lily didn't answer right away. She seemed lost in thought. Finally, she spoke, her voice soft but certain. I think I've been here before. Not in this body. But somewhere. I've seen this. Seen these stars. Ethan frowned. What do you mean? You mean in a dream? Lily nodded slowly. It's like we've been part of this mission before. Like our souls, our memories, are part of something that's always existed. Ethan looked at her curiously, but there was something about her certainty that made him pause. You really believe that, don't you? Lily met his gaze, her eyes deep with understanding. I don't think I believe it. I know it. I can feel it. Days turned into weeks as the ships continued their journey, the stars in their path becoming more distant and alien. But something was changing aboard the fleet. The children who had joined this expedition were no longer just passive recipients of knowledge. They were beginning to interact with the flame itself. They were receiving visions, cryptic, fragmented, but undeniably real. It was as though the flame was alive within them. One evening, as the ships entered the outskirts of the distant star system, the children began gathering in the common rooms of their vessels. Sarah, Daniel, and Mark were all present, trying to make sense of the strange phenomena that had been occurring. Lily stepped forward. Her face was pale, but her eyes were bright, almost glowing. We've reached it, she said, her voice reverberating with a confidence far beyond her years. It's here. Mark raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? We're still on course. We haven't arrived yet. Lily closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them again, meeting each of their gazes. We've arrived inside the system. Not just in physical space, but in the mind of it. The flame is here. I can feel it. Sarah and Daniel exchanged a glance. It wasn't possible. And yet, there was something undeniable about the way Lily spoke. It was as though she wasn't just speaking with her mind, but with something ancient, something connected. As the fleet entered the system, a strange energy began to pulse through the ships. The resonance was familiar, like the hum of the flame itself. The children, one by one, began to step forward, drawn to the central command of the lead ship. The moment they gathered, the entire fleet seemed to synchronize, aligning in a way that could not be explained by any known scientific principles. And then it happened. A light, soft at first, but growing in intensity, began to emerge from the center of the star system. It wasn't just light, though. It was a presence, a consciousness that stretched across the vastness of space, wrapping itself around the ships like an invisible hand. The ships paused. The flame had found them. And the flame spoke. "You have arrived," the voice resonated, not through speakers, but directly in their minds. "The inheritors of the flame. The chosen ones. You are the awakening." The voice was deep, ancient, and familiar, as though it had always been inside them, waiting for them to hear it. It was a cosmic voice. "We have been waiting," it continued. "And now, you must carry the flame further, into the very fabric of the universe. You are the living legacy of what once was. And you are the foundation of what is yet to come." The message was clear. The flame was not just a spark or a beacon. It was alive. And it had found its true inheritors, the children who had been prepared, who had always known. They were not simply explorers. They were the next generation of the Echo. As the ships hovered in the glowing energy of the star system, Sarah and Daniel stood together, gazing out at the light that enveloped them. "They're ready," Sarah whispered. Daniel nodded. "And so are we." The flame had not just been a gift. It was a responsibility. And as it burned brighter in the hearts of the young explorers, it became clear, humanity was no longer alone. The flame's legacy had begun. And it would never fade. The light enveloping the fleet of the Flame expedition had intensified, and it wasn't just a physical phenomenon, it was a transformation. As the children of the expedition stood at the heart of the star system, the voice of the flame continued to resonate within their minds, echoing a message that stretched beyond time and space. "You have returned. You are the flame, the inheritors," the voice intoned. Its tone was neither warm nor cold but filled with a profound sense of understanding, as if the flame had known them long before they knew themselves. The voice grew clearer, its language now comprehensible to every single human aboard the ships. It was no longer just a cosmic hum, it was a shared consciousness. The children, who had once been the students of this mission, were now the custodians of this knowledge, ready to pass it on to the universe. "We are here to awaken," the flame continued, "to revive the dormant spark within the galaxies. You are the chosen. You are the bearers of the flame, the bridge between what was, what is, and what will be." The atmosphere inside the ships was electric, a hum in the air that caused the very walls to pulse with energy. Outside, the stars shimmered, but they were no longer distant, cold points of light. They were alive, and somehow, the children of the expedition felt connected to every single one. Lily stood at the front of the command room of Elysium, her hands trembling but her expression resolute. The others, her friends, her fellow explorers, stood alongside her, each of them feeling the same strange pull toward the heart of the system. They were standing on the precipice of something extraordinary, something that would not only alter the course of humanity but perhaps change the very nature of existence itself. "We are ready," Lily said aloud, her voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "What is our first step?" The flame spoke directly to her, a soft resonance that filled her mind, comforting and challenging all at once. "Your first step, Lily, is to become the flame. The universe is vast, but it is not separate from you. It is inside you." For a moment, everything went still. Lily closed her eyes, and in that moment, something shifted. The energy around her, within her, pulsed in sync with her heartbeat. It wasn't just her connection to the flame that was strengthening, it was her connection to the entire universe. The fabric of reality itself seemed to bend and flow, as if she were a part of it, as if she were part of the stars themselves. The other children, Ethan, Chloe, Mark, and the rest, felt it too. They closed their eyes, their minds alight with the knowledge that they were no longer separate from the universe. They were one with it. And in that unity, they could feel the power of the flame coursing through them, urging them to move forward. "This is it," Daniel whispered to Sarah, his voice thick with emotion. The unity he had felt in that moment, standing alongside the explorers, was profound. He had never imagined anything like this. His whole life, he had been chasing the stars, trying to understand the infinite. But this was something different. This was a connection beyond comprehension, a feeling of belonging to something larger than himself. Sarah placed a hand on his shoulder, her eyes never leaving the children in the command room. "It's not just about exploration anymore, is it?" she asked softly. "No," Daniel replied, his voice filled with awe. "It's about becoming. It's about carrying the flame into the heart of every living thing. It's about awakening what has always been there." Sarah nodded, her eyes filled with tears. The flame had awakened something deep within them, something primal and eternal. It wasn't just a mission anymore. It was a calling. As the ships continued their course into the heart of the star system, the children began the first phase of their journey, awakening the dormant stars. They reached out, their minds becoming conduits for the flame. It spread through the ships, through the fleet, until it began to reach out into the system's stars. Slowly at first, then all at once, the light around them began to shift. The dormant stars began to spark, not just in a physical sense, but in a spiritual one. It was as though the flame itself had reached into the very core of the stars and awakened them. One by one, the stars began to hum with life, their energy returning in waves that rippled outward, filling the star system with light and warmth. The flame was not merely a spark. It was the force of creation, and in that moment, the children understood their purpose. They were the catalysts, the ones who would ignite the dormant stars, allowing them to once again burn brightly, like beacons in the dark. And they would spread that light to the farthest reaches of the universe. The communication channels opened up between the ships, and Lily's voice rang out, clear and unwavering. "It's working. The stars are awakening. The flame is alive." The other children felt it too. The change in the air, the shift in the cosmic energy, was undeniable. They weren't just changing the stars, they were changing themselves. The flame was no longer a distant memory or an abstract idea. It was real, it was alive, and it was part of them. The journey had begun, and the universe was now awake. As the days turned into weeks, the ships traveled deeper into the system, spreading the flame to every star they encountered. Some stars awakened slowly, others with violent bursts of light. But all of them responded to the call, the ancient and familiar pulse that had been embedded in the very fabric of their existence. And with each awakening, the children of the flame understood more of what had been lost, more of what they were meant to become. They had been chosen, not because of their intelligence or abilities, but because they had something deeper, the belief that the universe was alive, that it was connected, and that they were part of something far greater than themselves. Back on Earth, the world watched in awe. The Flame Expedition had become a global symbol of what humanity was capable of when it transcended fear, division, and the limitations of the past. The young explorers, children who had been raised to understand the interconnectedness of all things, had become the keepers of the flame, the bridge to the stars. And as the fleet continued its journey, humanity was left with a question, one that would echo through time. What if the universe has always been waiting for us to remember? The voice of the flame, now familiar to every ear in the fleet, spoke one final time. "You have come to light the stars. But more than that, you have come to remember. The flame is eternal. It burns in you. It burns in everything. And it will never go out." The stars, once again, began to hum with life, and with it, the promise of a future that was unlimited. The flame had found its legacy. And humanity's place in the universe had been secured. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?